Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. What's up, DB?
Oh, how are things?
Well, I'm just checking out this video that you tweeted out of Eagles fans, and they need to chill.
Man.
They need to chill.
So I heard gunshots literally about 7 feet from me Saturday night.
Oh, geez.
Oh, not kidding you. Did you see the whole arrest chase thing?
Yeah.
On the corner of 108th and Harris? That's
Yeah. Well, JP was talking about they ended up in his parking lot.
Oh, yeah. So, in the middle of the night, I'm hearing these sirens and gunshots, and I was like, oh, I wonder who's street racing.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, here goes the next door neighbor app. I mean, just blowing up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So the sleep was all sorts of screwed up.
Because normally it's so good.
It's not usually. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's not normally interrupted by gunshots, but it's not great.
It was back-to-back nights too, because I was gonna text you about the Open and your boy, but then I was like, nah, I ain't trying to wake this dude up.
Wait, which one do you think is my boy?
Center.
No, Center's not my boy.
Well, I wanted him to be your boy because he owns Zverev. So
I know, but Zverev's a diabetic, so I got to root for Zverev.
So I'm like, wow, he just can't get over the hump.
No, he
and
can't.
I wanted to talk to you about. Man, we'll get to that. But the whole competitive stamina thing. He passed the 40. I'm just saying.
Probably.
I mean, what angle do you want?
Yeah, it looked a lot like he passed the 40.
but yeah. So I did appreciate your text in the morning though, because you're like, hey, you don't have to worry about me waking up. If I'm asleep, then I'm asleep.
Yeah, text won't wake me up.
Text isn't going to do it.
It takes
which I can appreciate.
Like multiple phone calls for me to if you're trying to wake me up in the middle of the night.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It'll wake me up eventually, but you're going to have to just keep at it. A text message is not going to do it.
And of course, I had the window open, but the fan wasn't on, so I can hear
everything.
Yeah. Every team.
You sure it wasn't just Philadelphia Eagles fans celebrating a night early?
No, but isn't that wild?
Yeah, what are we doing?
My man just pulled. So in case you missed it,
go check out DB's Twitter.
Yeah, I retweeted from the Blue Shirt Nation. He's a diehard Rangers fan.
Okay. New York or Texas?
New York.
Okay.
So
both have blue shirts,
Yeah. Oh, he's drilling Panarin on his timeline. Who, by the way, Shane, you stole one last night. Good on you.
That's fine.
Avs Rangers. I was double dipping in sports, but
that's
anyway.
Okay. I'm only worried about my Winnipeg Jets.
So there's this huge crowd. They're clearly celebrating.
Yes.
And my man just takes out a gun, points it in the air, and shoots it a couple times, and everybody's like, yeah.
Yeah, nobody even turns.
No. So I was like,
nobody even flinched.
Didn't flinch, nothing. I was like, wow, this is how it's going down.
Yeah, I don't. Philly may not be the place for me.
Oh,
if
man.
I'm going to be honest.
I did. I mean, so I laughed.
Yeah.
But it's probably not funny.
No, but my initial reaction was to laugh as well because it was so absurd. I was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, nobody gave a what.
That was the thing. It's that. So the visual of it is a little jarring just to see this guy pull a gun out.
He's just like, da.
Super casual. But then the fact that no one even flinches.
How about how whomever was filming?
Yeah.
There was no shake. There was no nothing.
No,
he just slowly kept panning.
Yeah. Just oh, don't worry about that.
I was like, wow.
No one's even bothered by it.
Pretty icy.
I was like, I don't know that Philly's the place for me.
Yeah.
I may not be wired that way.
Too. So, yeah. So just a wild.
It's a wild weekend.
It was. It really was. That game last night. So I didn't have a ton of surprises across the sports spectrum, except for
Sports Spectrum, like the old magazine.
Was that a thing?
Yeah, it was Spectrum? like a Christian sports magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My
mom used to buy it for me when I was a kid.
Did she?
Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of surprises in the sports landscape except for Kansas's meltdown. Like that actually,
yeah, because
what I would say surprised me.
You texted me and DeMarina's
early in the
real
day.
time.
Yep.
And you're like, hey, when's the last time Houston beat anybody good?
I said it seems like it's been a sec.
Yeah, and it has. It had.
Right? Because that was before tip.
Yeah.
I just was looking forward to something good because
it's kind of a slate.
Well, the slate should have been better.
Right, but it didn't end up.
But it didn't end up that way. Like the games
were
were sucky.
Yeah.
Up until Saturday night. And I was telling D. Meyer, I was like, well, hopefully Tennessee, Auburn, and Kansas, Houston can save the day.
Which they kind of did.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Even though.
Like stylistically, that's not the kind of game I want to watch with Auburn, Tennessee.
Welcome to the world of, and we saw it back to back with NFL, but welcome to the world of when Jay Billis does not like officiating.
Yeah.
I mean, it dominated.
Yeah, it did.
And I was afraid for anything to go to replay because he's had the historic
he's gonna go hard
meltdowns of it taking too long in crunch time.
Yep.
Like he's going to go all in. And my man will say things like, "Oh, shocker," or like he'll be super condescending.
He is real sarcastic,
which is kind of the antithesis of what you get with the Shield.
Yes.
Watching those broadcasts,
like, I think that's a good call
because they're almost so dismissive. It's frustrating.
Yeah, they just placate.
It's like the tale of a couple of worlds.
Well, that's the difference between having like an organized situation like the NFL where there's somebody in charge, and then you've got the NCAA that's just a free for all.
I mean, yeah.
Like who's going to crack down on Jay Billis? Nobody.
No.
Right.
Like,
maybe a conference since they're their officials, but they don't care.
Yeah. So that game was not like. It's not how I wanted to watch it.
Auburn, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Houston, Kansas. I mean, just so much going on.
I don't know how they did that twice in the same game.
It's wild.
It's hard to do.
That was wild. And then of course yesterday. So I couldn't believe I can, but I can't. So there are a couple huge takeaways right away.
Okay.
Number one, spot on that the Commanders just weren't going to get any stops. Like that was just not a good enough.
And that they felt a little maxed out getting there.
Yeah, just was not a good.
Like that was the top of their talent right there.
I didn't love the well, anyway, the broadcast is the broadcast, but I'm glad everybody got the Brady Romo experience back to back for comparison.
That's fun for everybody. That's fun for everybody.
Oh boy. I do wonder if Bills fan is torn listening to Romo when Allen's not playing against Mahomes. Because he definitely, I mean, remember, he's the guy that dubbed him the alien.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard alien like for 55 different times during a broadcast a couple years ago. But then now with these Mahomes matchups, it's almost like Allen's this other.
Yeah, he's like the stepchild.
He's like this other guy.
Yeah.
So I wonder how Bills fans maneuver the love fest going to, yeah, that's not my guy anymore.
Yeah, I would imagine they are sort of with most of the rest of the football watching world that is not a huge fan.
And my man TB, he just goes hard. TB12 has zero cares.
Well, it's not
10,
like
11, 12.
I mean, zip.
It's not like he needs the job. You know what I mean?
Dude, he's cold-blooded.
Like, I'm pretty sure Giselle's paying him alimony, so I think he's all right.
Hard to do.
Like, I think he's okay.
Woo-wee.
But no, he does go hard. Although while I don't love Brady, I don't mind stylistically what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind guys that have an opinion.
That's cool.
You know, like I think there's a place for that in broadcasting. I just don't necessarily love him.
Yeah, so I think having, you don't know what you got until it's gone. I probably bring back Olsen.
Oh, Olsen's better at the job.
Even though I didn't you know,
Olsen's better at
he
the
was
job.
cool.
Yeah.
He was cool.
Some of the insights now. I mean, like when he says like we call it this and we call it that. I mean that some of that insight's pretty good. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily get that.
It's not for guys like me, but I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
People with less of a football background would find it insightful.
Yeah, because especially the common language thing it's not universal across organizations.
Yeah.
So, like when he says that, that's what he calls it.
Right.
You know what I
could
mean?
be something totally different than what
Right. Like
Philly's calling
yeah.
it. Or yeah.
So, I mean that's fine. I mean, take it from a guy who's been cut by multiple teams. I tell you, the language is not the same.
But also, I mean, we knew that from Nebraska this year, where they're talking about John Butler coming in. It's like, oh, we do the same things. It's called X, Y, and Z. Instead of
and
ABC.
how long it took Holgerson to
to translate. Yeah. Oh, this means this.
So I don't love that part of it, Shane. But that's not a shot at you. I'm just saying, well, some people call it that, some people don't.
Yeah.
But he's big into doing that. Well, when I did this, when I did this, and I'm just like,
I think that's personally, I think that's what they want him to do.
Do you?
Yeah, because what's the point of having Tom Brady if he's not going to tell war stories?
How about this though? Speaking of which, remember when I text you guys? This was before the games or like early, and I go, hey, what you're going to get is he's going to say something. And then about 6 minutes later, he's going to say just the opposite. Right? Then that's real time, right?
Yeah.
And then he's lamenting over Hurts and the time he had in the pocket and what the statistics show for his accuracy with time in the pocket. And then about 3 snaps later, he's upset that he didn't get rid of the ball.
Rid of the ball.
And I'm like, that's what I'm. Brady strikes me as the type of guy who's a new guy that has someone in his ear.
Yeah.
So they're kind of telling him stuff
like real time. I could see that
because he can change on a dime. Like, hey, that was too much this way. Go the other way, or because that I mean that happens. Yeah. So maybe he just needs a little more time to kind of settle into like what his own deal is going to be and not really give 2 cares. But he will go back and he will say just the opposite in a matter of minutes. Yeah. And I was laughing at myself because I was like, ooh, I didn't expect him to do it that quick.
That was a little quicker than normal.
You know. Yeah. So who hit the emphasize? Was that Matty D?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, shoot, he did it right on cue.
Just right off back. That was back to back. Yeah, it does seem like he's got somebody coaching him real time.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel cohesive.
And I think it's very, very, very critical on who those guys in those big moments work with. Like some guys are just different with different people. Like I don't ordinarily I like him. I don't normally love Stephen Bardo.
Okay.
I think he's fantastic with Kevin.
Oh, with Kugler?
Because, you can just tell, like, I didn't care much for James Lofton until he was with Kevin. And I'm not saying this just because I like Kevin. I'm saying your play-by-play guy.
Oh, he helps you or hurts you a lot.
He totally or she totally sets the table.
100%.
Like, it's on. I mean, they're the like they make that thing go.
100%.
You know, the analysts are just like, I'm just trying to play off a.
It's like how good a quarterback can make a receiver look, right?
Yeah.
Receivers can look pretty average with a bad quarterback.
Like Hummel isn't always the same.
Right. There's some versions of Hummel.
There's some versions of Robbie Hummel where he just won't stop talking.
Tough hang.
And then you listen to him with a couple of other guys, and it's like, oh, man, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't used to like, who's my man? He's wearing the tinted glasses now. I don't know if he's having eye problem. Sean.
Color or play-by-play?
Color.
Sean.
College basketball. He's wearing he gave me some Harry Carey vibes this weekend.
What game was he on?
It's Big Ten.
Sean, I got nothing. I don't know the Big Ten guys very well.
What?
I don't like listening to them.
Shame on you.
I mean, some of them are really good.
Just because they're not your Big East brethren.
Listen, they don't always get the volume on the quad box. That's all I'm saying.
Sean,
They don't always get the volume on the quad box.
Sean, come on.
But
DB.
I mean, it's true. I'll let you think about that for a second. It's true in this job too, though. Like anybody that's listened to you for a long time, like DB is different with Michael than he was with Gary. Than he was with me,
this Lowell travesty, Shane, he's kind of a prick. He just basically comes in the stream to be obnoxious. He doesn't contribute a ton. I mean, I'm just saying. Hey, switch it up for a little bit, Lowell. We can take criticism, but like be better. The other thing is like for if the tempo and the tenor of the game, like how you're receiving the information, is set that way too, right? So it's like if for like let's say Billis, right? You couldn't get out of the fact you found yourself watching that game like you wanted everything to be a foul.
Yeah,
because that's kind of what was. That's
how Billis was sort of priming you.
Is being ingrained. So like it can be very like I don't know, man.
It can. I mean, it really can impact how you're watching a game.
That's why, like, if I'll tweet out like clips or something, I try to do no volume.
Yeah,
just
so you don't want to be informed.
Yeah, and I somebody told me that a long time ago. I can't remember, but I started with boxing, right? Because I don't want to be influenced by.
Oh yeah, with the scorecards.
Watching scorecards.
Yeah, for sure.
So sometimes I'll try like if I'm kind of a loser, so you have time. Like I watched like 4 or 5 series in a row in the Chiefs-Bills games with no volume, just to see, like if it was any different for me the way that I felt about the play.
Yeah.
So it was like, I don't know. As B-Mac shot me a Sean. Thank you, Sean Morris. Thank you, TK. Sean Morris.
There you go.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't right, but every time he said Sean, I was just like McDonough, and I was like, that's not the guy.
Yeah,
and so I couldn't get it out of my brain.
I love him. I'm a little
McDonough.
I lack objectivity.
I think he's good.
I think
he's really good. The that kind of what you're talking about though, with the kind of the play-by-play and the color commentator informing how you watch the game. Do you think that had anything to do with the way people received that Josh Allen controversial call, or was that he made it, we're good?
Probably, because I think they both thought he got it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, probably.
Because if let's say the color guy is like, oh, man, I can't really see where the ball is. It looks like his body's past it, but then I'm assuming the ball is past it too, but I can't see it. That changes how people feel about it probably, right?
I think the easier thing, maybe it's not easy. The easy thing about that is just watch the mechanics of how they spotted the ball. If nothing else, that was poor.
Yeah, well, listen. Don't get me started on ball spotting.
Oh, I mean,
because it's a disaster.
Like, so I think the mechanics, regardless of,
they did it poorly. Yeah. They did their job poorly, even if they got it right.
Yeah,
and I don't know if they did or not. I really have no idea.
Like, I think that was probably
because you had the guy on the far sideline come in like a yard ahead of where the guy on the near sideline was, and then they sort of just met in the middle.
I just didn't like how he walked it in diagonal.
Yeah, right. Listen. I know this is like a Michael Severe like honeypot here with spotting the ball.
He's going ham.
But like it is. This is like a big thing for him. But I know.
Oh, you should hear Greg.
Really?
Oh yeah. And he's really good.
I have.
Sharpie is really good with that stuff. Sometimes it's amazing, and I'm not just saying that because I work with him.
Nobody like eyeballs it.
Yeah,
like,
he can do it. He
like real time. It's unreal.
So I just stop
guessing.
I don't even give him pushback. If he says 47.5, I'm like, oh, I'll even say anything.
You're like, it looks like 47 and 5/8 to me, Sharpie. But no, I know this is the thing I know Severe has been railing on for years. But it's in the year 2025.
I don't know, man.
We don't have a better way.
I don't know. I don't know about the whole technology.
Here's the thing.
Is it even feasible?
We put a guy on the moon 60 years ago.
Are you sure? Yes.
I'm sure. I can watch anything I want from a box in my pocket. You're telling me we can't figure out a way to accurately spot a football in a game. Yep. I know it's a different technology. it'd be similar but more complicated. But I can see in real time, literal seconds after it happens in a volleyball or tennis match, exactly where that ball hits. Exactly. I get it's a little more moving parts with football.
So tennis does instant replay the best?
Tennis is incredible. They don't even have. You can challenge it, but you don't even really have instant. You don't even have replay because it's just boom. Hey, this is where it is.
Do you like replay assist real time during football games?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because it's quick. Like it's generally pretty quick. I'm just saying it's 2025. This has been happening in tennis for 20 years. It's volleyball. It happens in real time. Like I don't know. This is a $1 billion industry, and now we've got they're officially in bed with gambling. This stuff matters. Like this is not just it's the spirit of competition in the game. Like financially, this stuff matters now in a way that officially it didn't before. But now the NFL's gone all in on gambling. You have to figure out a way to get it right.
Yeah. You
can't just have.
I wonder how many people that are mad on social media.
It's a gambling thing.
It's a gambling thing.
It could be. I would imagine
because this was the first time that I've kind of just been paying attention. Like there wasn't a ton of pushback from Chiefs fans. Like they kind of just whistled on by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think they were cool. Like sometimes, like whatever it is in the moment, like you count your deals and you move on because a couple of things can be true at once. Because when you watch Kansas City, it's like it's why I backed off of taking the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
That game went almost exactly what scared me in my mind.
This is how every Kansas City game goes.
It's like, gosh, I want to take this other team. I think it's a really good matchup. But at the end of the day, I just don't think you're going to make enough winning plays.
No, and they didn't.
Right? Like, at the end, I just think Kansas City's going to do something right at the right time more times than whomever in the free world they're playing.
What did we say in the group chat? When Allen failed on that drive,
that wasn't even J.A.'s fault.
It's not though. It's not. But they failed to score on that drive. We texted back and forth. That's a drive Mahomes always scores on.
Yeah.
And that's not even an exaggeration. If you look at his history in the playoffs, he literally is 100% scoring in those situations.
One team had a ball dropped by an all-pro tight end. The other goes to Pirine in crunch time.
And guess who won? More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, reminding you to make sure that seatbelt is buckled and buckled properly. Make it click. It prevents injuries and saves lives, but only when worn properly. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. DB.
Yo. You want to tell, like I said, I even think Chiefs fans are kind of chilling, right? You want to know why I like B-Mac?
Why is that?
It's not because he's funny. He had a funny one last night.
Is this Benny Mac or Bernie Mac?
Benny.
Okay.
Remember, we said that they had some similar.
Yeah,
No, that was Coatney that said Benny and Bernie Mac have some
very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
I could easily confuse the two.
So my man B-Mac, just honest as the day is long, right? Like, hey, listen, man, I know it was a poop call. It was a poop spot. He didn't say poop. It was a poop spot on the 4th and 1. But if you're Buffalo, it can't come down to that. Why Cook wasn't used more was tragic. What did I say to you real time?
You're like, hey, is Cook injured?
Is he hurt?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't think so.
I have no idea.
But the fact that you said it actually made me think. I was like, did I see him limp off or anything? No, I haven't seen him in a while.
Like even the drive that they scored on the 4th and goal, like
where was he?
Yeah, like even when they handed it to Ty Johnson on the cutback, I was like,
where's Cook?
Wow, TJ? Okay.
You know who's really good?
Like, where's James Cook?
He's pretty good.
So I thought something maybe happened to him. And then the first play on the opening drive, they like ran the toss with him. I was like, with TJ, and I was like, where's Cook?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's spot on. That's why even when I tweeted out the deal, like no dog in the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't care, and I mean, truth be told, like I was wishy-washy, right? I love the Bills all week, and then at Friday I was like, golly, man, I can't see.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against.
I just can't pick against the Chiefs at home. So like clearly I want to be right, but it was a bad spot. So even like if you didn't like the third down or whatever, I didn't know enough real time about the Kincaid spot. I thought they may take a look at it. They didn't.
Yeah.
I thought Allen clearly got the first down. But like a couple of things can be true at once. The Chiefs make so many plays that other teams have the opportunity to make. They just don't. And I don't know what you call it when you're playing against somebody and they make you feel like you have to be perfect.
Yeah.
So whatever you call that, like the Chiefs have that.
100%.
And because the Chiefs have been the Chiefs, they don't think like that.
No, they just assume they're going to make the play.
So again, the Chiefs threw the ball twice when Buffalo had less than 2 timeouts. Who else is doing that?
Nobody.
Guess what? They completed both
Yeah, it worked.
passes.
It worked. And who was one of them too? DB.
A guy that had about 5 or 6 snaps all game.
The entire game.
And 1 target. You run a little slip out of the backfield on the little mesh against man to Pirine for the most critical play in the game.
0 carries.
Meanwhile,
1 target.
Allen makes an incredible throw. It should have got more run. I'm glad they at least got back because for all the fawning over the corner blitz, which was a magnificent call.
It was.
But I felt like
and forced his hand.
They spent way too much time talking about Spag's corner blitz,
Which was
not
great.
And not because it was it was a great call,
Unbelievable.
right? But and not enough time talking about the throw.
I thought
It looked like some heave, right?
it did. What did I text you?
Kincaid was actually open.
Which I couldn't believe because from the first angle you couldn't see that he was open.
You could.
It wasn't until like the second replay, I think from behind, where I was like, "Holy crap! He actually threw it to Kincaid."
Yeah,
and it was a good throw.
Yep.
I was blown away.
So you're all pro caliber tight end
because it looked like a YOLO ball.
Doesn't make a play.
Yeah,
and everybody for the Chiefs
just comes out of the woodwork.
Did
you just have Samaje Perine, who 0 carries, 1 target.
How about when you just randomly throw the ball to Pacheco? You decide to throw it to Pacheco.
Right? There you go. Boom.
You just shake your head.
That's what they do, though.
Oh, that's ultimately. And I didn't feel good. I had to apologize to my man KP. We've been through the war together. I was like, look, I want the Bills to really win this game. I want to see some new blood. Like, I'm cheering for you guys. I love James Cook. I like Josh Allen. You saw the graphic that they played with Mahomes?
Which one?
The wins in the playoff record?
Oh, yeah.
You know my man's not even 30.
Yeah.
And he's second in all-time wins. He's not even 30.
I mean,
that was just too much for me to.
Yeah. Well, what did we say last week, right?
We're going to do this thing again.
We kind of like the Bills.
He's wild.
We kind of like the Bills.
I like the Bills.
But
how about? Go ahead.
But they're going against the better quarterback.
Yeah.
The better head coach.
Yeah.
The better defense. I threw the best pass catcher, certainly in that game. Travis Kelce was the best pass catcher in that game. And
although the no shoes dude would give you a run for your money.
Fine. That's fine.
I mean, he was pretty clutch.
I'm taking Kelce over him.
No, he wasn't the best receiver yesterday.
No, he wasn't. But going into it, you'll take Kelce over everybody else in that game.
Yeah.
You'll take Spagnuolo over every other assistant coach in that game, right? So,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
probably.
Yeah, I thought Brady was pretty good.
Sure,
yesterday.
Sure.
Again, historically though, you're right.
You'll take Spagnuolo. You'll take a chance with Spagnuolo over basically every other assistant coach in the league almost.
Yeah, Babbage did keep him in it though.
For sure.
Especially scrambling after that first drive where it looked like
oh dear God,
hot knife and butter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's what happens when you let a smart guy script.
Yeah, it's gonna go poorly for you.
It looked like,
but I'll give Buffalo
that
credit.
was a heck of an adjustment, and they had lost Bernard, and they were playing without Trapp. So
it did take them basically the first full half.
Benford.
Because if they'd been able to make that adjustment a little bit before halftime, they give themselves a better chance.
And
like
you almost found a way to win against the best team in football in the middle eight too.
Yeah,
because it looked daunting.
Bad.
It looked daunting when the Chiefs got the ball back, and I mean that's why the touchdown was so big going in.
Yeah, I mean we were talking about it while we were watching the game. We go, hey, they gotta score. Like if Buffalo doesn't score there, they lose. Like I mean and it's probably not as close as it ends up being. I get they end up losing anyway, but maybe this is just the Mark Andrews love in me. There was felt like a little karmic retribution with the tight end drop yesterday.
Yeah, but at least Bills Mafia was trying to help Andrews out.
I appreciate that.
They were like looking out.
Yeah, they got like 6 figures deep into the diabetes organization, which I appreciate.
That was all.
No, it's incredible.
I lack objectivity with the Bills fan base because of Harrison's time there.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about what that community is, and I told you about like just leaving food on players' doors and stuff like that, and like rallying, just a tight knit community. Like
I'll ride with Bills Mafia.
Yeah, I'm in on Bills Mafia.
But it was a little ironic that
Kincaid's he had the one earlier in his hands that Reed stripped.
Yeah, it was I mean, Andrews had the fumble in the week before,
and I was ooh, you. It's just, it would be like your sphincter would just double pucker over. Oh gosh,
like a collective puckering.
I forgot. Who said that?
Brunts. It was Bruns's collective puckering.
Pucker.
Sounds like the name of.
Where you feel like every time you play Kansas City, is that going to be? It doesn't happen to any other team. It's like, oh shoot, man, is that going to be the play that comes back to get you?
Listen, I've watched this man play against my team in 2 Super Bowls over the last 5 years. I am very familiar with the collective puckering.
And one of those, he was left for dead. And you still didn't want to give him the ball back.
In both of those, he was kind of left for dead. San Francisco was dominating both of those games in the second half in each of those situations. And the first time, it was early in Mahomes' career. We didn't really know he was about this life yet. And so I was like, okay, maybe they'll be able to figure it out. I should have known better because Jimmy G was our quarterback. But the second time, as soon as it played out the way it did, I was like, oh, they gave him too much time. This is over. I knew it wasn't even a puckering. It was a resigned feeling that it was over.
It was kind of how I feel like every time the Patriots would knock the Steelers out in the playoffs or some meaningful game. It's like there's always those 1 or 2 plays I was like, shoot, you have to make those against Tampa. Or Tom.
You get
2. And for every one that the Bills didn't make, I would go, oh gosh,
there's one of them.
There's one.
Yep.
And I don't do like with the Chiefs, don't drop a ball they don't execute. I was like, ooh, caught a break there. But when it's the other way, I'm like, shoot, that might be the death knell.
Right? How weird is that?
It's in pros. It's very weird.
Super unusual. We'll maybe set up the show next. Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Coming up on the show today, 8 o'clock, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. At 9, we've got Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for Sporting News. We'll get into the conference championships, the Super Bowl matchup, all that good stuff. There's also, I hope we can get into some of this with Vinnie as well. That's why we've got him for one of the big segments. But, there's been some of the coaching stuff that's been going on that's weird. I can't.
It's weird.
It's weird. I've been thinking about this Liam Cohen thing for 3 days, and I can't get over it.
Why?
Okay, so this is a weird. Our mutual friend in the middays.
Yeah.
So they did this bit when Nebraska was in season looking for a coach, right?
Yeah.
And they had a wheel. The brainchild.
Oh, I remember that.
The brainchild of the great.
God, that was a minute ago.
Yeah. The brainchild of the great Josh Odson, I believe. Yeah. Love that guy. So they had a wheel, and
man, J.O. Felony.
And I'm biased because I convinced them to put my face on the wheel as a potential head coach.
Yeah.
Because there were not enough candidates for the wheel, right?
Okay.
So they put faces, little pie pieces.
I remember this.
For every head coaching candidate.
Yes,
and so you had Rule on there, you had Lane Kiffin, you had everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And there were, again, too many spaces, so you ended up with people like me on there as a joke. One of the people that ended up on there that was somewhere between a real candidate and me was Liam Cohen.
Yeah.
He was, and you know why I remember this? Because I was filling in one day, and I spun the wheel, and then I was forced to give the candidacy for Liam Cohen, and I was like, I don't really have one.
Yeah.
I was like, I can make a better case for me as head coach of Nebraska. So that was the fall of 2021. Liam Cohen, just a few short years later,
was the one guy that could get Trent Baalke out of his job.
Apparently had enough juice as a head coaching candidate to get a guy fired as a GM.
The GM,
the survivor
that everybody that was interested in the job passed on
because of the GM.
Yeah, because they were upset with the process.
So maybe Liam Cohen was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and he's the one that was left when the music stopped playing, so that was the open chair. But I'm trying to figure out how Liam Cohen went from being kind of a joke spot on the wheel of coaches to having enough juice as an NFL head coaching candidate to get a GM fired.
But I don't know, except for
because not that much has changed for Liam Cohen since
but a lot of times what those guys do is they look at the track record, right? And look what he's done with Baker.
I get that. But he's only been there for 1 year.
No,
he was with Baker for 1 year. It looked good. Don't get me wrong. It looked good. But he was at Kentucky in two different stints where it looked fine. He was with the Rams in between there where it was fine.
How about Moogs, though, in New York?
Yeah.
Where it seemed like I don't know. I'm going to ask Vinnie. But did you get the vibe that Glenn was the one interviewing Moogs?
It sort of felt.
It seemed like that.
Well, it sounds like Cohen's going to get a hire the GM. Did you hear that?
Oh yeah.
So it's like, what's happening here?
Those guys do have to be on the same page. So
I get that.
So I get it. It's changed, but
you're basically letting a coordinator hire your GM. That's what's happening. Neither of these guys have been head coaches.
So with Spytek and who's my guy in Washington that's had the really good drafts?
Oh,
is it Moore?
I'm gonna have to look it up. I don't.
Yeah, Commander's general man. Is it Moore?
Adam Peters.
Adam Peters. So do you know who hired?
Did you see how fast I Googled?
That's pretty good. Yeah. So it's Peters.
Yeah.
Do you know whose tree all these general managers are under?
Who?
You're gonna laugh your head off.
Who?
John Elway.
John Elway's kind of a good exec.
John Elway
he's kind of a good exec.
Gosh, I should have. If I'd have known this was gonna happen, I would have done a deeper dive. I'd be willing to bet if I put it at 3.5 general managers, front office guys in the NFL. I take the over that they came from the John Elway branch.
Mm.
Remember he hired all those little mini execs in Denver?
Yeah.
Oh, they all have jobs.
Which I kind of appreciate because
all those guys have jobs.
He'd never really done the job before. He kind of honestly,
he's got Moogs.
Not to give credit here.
He's got Spytek. He's got
Peters.
I guarantee there's at least one more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of low-key did the thing that Dion did, where he's like, hey, I've never really had this type of job before. I'm going to get people with a ton of experience around me or that I think are going to be really good at these positions I need them to be.
You ever think you'd be talking about like Elway in the Parcells coaching tree thing?
Exec tree?
Man.
Yeah.
I'm going to well, I need somebody smarter than me, but
yeah, somebody who likes to do research and stuff.
My man Stu Manji, RDK, one of those guys.
Yeah, one of our guys. Figure out the John Elway executive tree.
You're going to be like, what the heck?
Well, it's kind of turning into the McVay coaching tree now.
Yeah, McVay's a wizard, though.
McVay's getting a lot of those dudes that are getting a lot of those guys paid.
So Moogs has never had coming from he's been with Denver since 12, right?
I believe so.
So the Jets basically did everything we didn't think they were going to do. They hired a first-time head coach and a first-time general manager.
Well, that's because they told us they didn't want a first-time head coach. It's not just we were speculating. They came out and said, hey, we want a head coach with experience. That's why they were talking to some of these dudes, you're just like, I'm sorry, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I still think, Shane, in looking at these coaching hires, I hope and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the Raiders get.
I sure hope so.
Well, I mean,
it just was kind of a bizarre coaching carousel because the team that we thought maybe messing it up, and I don't know if it's going to work, but they got the hottest coordinator candidate in Chicago.
Yes. I still think that's strange. I'm not really sure how I feel about that.
Dude, just totally backdoored that thing.
I also, you're right. Moogs had been with Denver since 12. That's basically the only organization he'd worked with. So the funny thing about that
I'm only calling him Moogs because they call him Moogs. I'm not calling him Moogs because I'm cool. I didn't even know how to pronounce his name 3 days ago.
I'm calling him Moogs because I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name.
No, they like everybody just says Moogs, so I'm guessing Moogie. I'm guessing Moogs is short for Moogie.
I would guess, but I really don't know. I've only ever heard him called Moogs, so I have no idea.
I apologize in advance.
I apologize.
Well, if I was on a broadcast, somebody would have emailed me or texted me by now and saying, "Hey, you're screwing that up."
Hey, his name is this. Show him some respect. How dare you? You aren't friends. Stop it.
I was watching a basketball game the other day, and they kept saying Matah instead of Murtaugh, and I was losing my mind.
Matah.
I was like, she's going for 25 a night. We probably ought to get her name
Gotta
right.
get the name right.
Yeah, it's Murtaugh, and she's good.
Yeah, it's a little different when you're on a broadcast, I feel like.
Yeah, well, shoot. Who am I, man? It's happened to me.
Feels like it should be a little more buttoned up if you can be, you know?
Yeah. Took me.
I will say, one of my favorite things, and I haven't done a lot of games, but
there's two in particular I can remember.
What's that?
There's so Peeper and Piper.
Okay.
Two different for Norfolk Catholic, and I can't remember where my first guy played, which was some years apart. And then I had a who texted me? Tish, maybe? Somebody texted me during a York broadcast over Simon Odie versus Adi. Because sometimes in those broadcasts, like families like it like the way that it's supposed to be pronounced, and sometimes they don't correct people that have you said it that way for X amount of time, right? So I do remember that one because he was a flipping tackling machine. I thought everything on his body was broke, and all he kept doing was making tackles for in the state championship. I was like, probably had to learn that guy's name too.
I haven't done, and it's harder in high school because they don't really
just call him Simon.
they don't have these in high school that I've seen yet. But they, anytime you have the little audio button, the pronunciation button on a website,
a lot of college teams' websites they do that now.
I love it.
I like it a lot.
There were a couple doozies when I did St. John's a couple of years ago against Creighton, and I was like, ooh, and then I was like, oh, I love that button.
Yeah, and you feel like you have a better handle on the Big East?
Nope, not at all. Not even a little bit. So our guy Austin Jacobson coming through here.
What's AJ got for me?
Okay, so John Elway front office tree. We've got
he does not mess around.
Mogi.
Yep.
We've got Peters.
Yep.
We've got Spytek as GMs.
Yep, those are the three.
Okay, and then former Raiders GM Dave Ziegler was a guy. Lynch for the 49ers.
How did I forget about JL?
I know. He was a scout there. Phillies senior personnel exec Matt Russell and former personnel exec for Denver, now with Las Vegas, Champ Kelly. So you're talking.
I'd have been safe as a kitten. I said 3.5.
Like 7, 8?
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
For all the flack we gave that guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's a pretty good exec.
Dude, I think Spytek might be the guy.
You think so?
Yeah, I kind of want to watch this unfold the next couple of years.
I'll be honest. I was real hesitant about Lynch. I'm good now.
Yeah.
When he got hired.
But it's funny, though, because the ebb and flow of how, he's had his ups and downs within his tenure, too.
Yeah, he has. Internally.
Yeah.
And I was not.
I think you're on the good side of that.
I think so. Yeah. I think I'm okay there. But I'll be honest, I was a little iffy when he got hired.
I hear you, AJ.
Appreciate Austin Jacobson, our crack statistician, coming through here. We've got Sam McKewon coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We will be joined in just a few moments by our guy Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. I'm imagining we'll get into some Nebraska basketball with Sam, don't you think?
Yeah.
I think that might be a hot topic.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, you just tell Nebraska basketball fans to hang in there, and they're like, "Yeah, Damon, that's what we've been doing." So
you're exactly right.
I get it, man. I don't know. I was surprised. The only thing I'll say about yesterday before we get to Sam was, I was surprised that he trotted out the same starting lineup in the second half.
Yeah,
after the 19-2 run.
I would agree. It didn't start well for him. I do struggle. I'm not necessarily defending Fred here, but I do struggle sometimes with the, hey, if you genuinely thought this would work, how quickly do you want to be reactionary to it, right? Like if you genuinely thought, okay, Sam and Andrew Morgan give me the best chance here.
How many poor performances are you counting SC as a poor performance?
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah.
I think you have Michigan State, you have Iowa.
For sure.
Was Purdue a poor performance or just kind of ran into a buzzsaw that day?
I mean, it's not a good performance. I didn't think they showed up.
Okay, let's say you count Purdue.
Yeah, I'm going to count Purdue.
And Wisconsin.
USC's the least concerning of the group.
Maryland.
Maryland's least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Maryland and USC.
Which, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you see how they won?
No, I did not.
Oh, Ravi, it's Indiana. You know I had to watch.
Oh, I saw the end of it.
So somehow
because
Indiana's resolve got them up 2.
Yeah.
With a chance to win.
Yeah.
And then Rice did Rice things, but
or Indiana did Indiana things, depends on how you look at it.
I'm telling you, if Maryland figures out the road thing,
they might be okay.
They got some pieces.
Like I don't think the Maryland loss is bad.
The more I've watched them this year, I don't know, man.
I think Maryland, USC are definitely the least poor performance-y of that group. I don't know how you come out of the gate getting 19-2 when you really need this one. But I do sit there and I wonder, okay, if I genuinely believe that Morgan and Hoiberg are going to give me the best chance or give me a better chance than what I've been doing, then is one half enough of an example to pull the plug on it? So I get what you're saying. You start a new starting lineup and they go 19-2 right out of the gate. That's a tough look to trot them back out there in the second half. And maybe just from your team morale standpoint, you can't do it, even if you do think it's going to work. Maybe you sub them in early in the second half to say, hey, I do think these guys give us a more competitive chance, but I'm not going to start them again because that's going to be a tough look for our guys. But I do struggle a little bit with at what point do you pull the plug?
You want the best player in the conference nobody talks about? I think this isn't hyperbole.
John Taji?
No, it's Jacoby Gillespie from Maryland. Ask DeMarinis. He knows that's my guy.
Let's get to our guy Sam McKewon here from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, what's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing?
Sammy Mac. Okay, so are you going to enjoy the weather today? You know we got to. Know we're starting with Lincoln weather.
Love it.
Love it. I'm concerned. I'm on record. I need some precip. I need some moisture. We're too dry.
Oh.
So, I'm again, Sam, big balance guy, big balance guy. I need some precip coming. Okay.
You might not get any until Thursday.
Well, I hope you're right. I just want it sometime.
Yeah, you don't want to turn on the faucets in the winter. So
yeah,
when it comes to the winter, you're at a little bit at the mercy of the weather giving you the snow or the rain.
Sam, I'm a big green grass in the spring and a big anti-wildfire guy. So I kind of operate under those two hopes.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about. I hope you're not in any danger of a wildfire.
No. It's
property.
My neighbor has enough dangers, Sam. We just have high-speed chases and guys shooting guns at 4 a.m. But outside of that,
yeah, that's not good.
Neighborhood's pretty safe, Sam. Pretty safe. Speaking of safe, how safe is the thought process that Nebraska basketball cannot pull out of this with the pending schedule?
Well, they'll win a couple down the stretch. They'll probably win 2 or 3, maybe 4. They've got, an outside chance at whatever they're calling the NIT now or whatever it's called. They got a shot at that. That's probably the reasonable goal at this point. But they're going to have a hard time making the NCAA tournament. And that's, a byproduct. Honestly, it's a byproduct of the 2 home losses more than anything. If I told you, hey, they're going to lose at Wisconsin, at Maryland, and at Purdue, I think everybody's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Those are 3 NCAA tournament teams, and, Maryland's playing pretty well. So that's not all that shocking. I think it was the 2 home losses. Because if you win those 2, then you kind of go into the back half of the schedule and you kind of size it up and you say, okay, 14 wins, got to get to 20, 21. Maybe the sum will be greater than the parts, and you'll find a way to steal one on the road. For example, I think they could steal one at Oregon. I do.
Yeah.
I think Oregon is
it's a weird team.
Athletic. They're not great. I don't know how they're number 15 in the country, but their home court advantage is almost non-existent. They don't really get a lot of fans. They might get 4,000 or 5,000 to that game, and some of them will probably be Nebraska fans. So there's going to be some environments on the road where they can go steal one. They almost stole one at Maryland. You're not going into Wisconsin or Purdue on a Sunday and beating them. It's just very hard to do. They have great crowds. It's a tough environment. You got to find a way to win one on the road when the crowd isn't there. And the next one like that is Oregon and then Washington. If they can find a way to beat Illinois Thursday and then they can go steal one at Oregon, maybe they're a little bit back on track. But, yeah, it's disappointing. I know they're disappointed. You can tell they're pretty down. And, he's probably trying to keep their heads up a little bit. But I think that's hard to do when you come out of the gate and you're down 19-2 4 minutes into the game.
Sam, if you go into this season the way you did, coming off an NCAA tournament appearance last year, you start 12-2, and now all of a sudden the expectation is, let's hope we can make an NIT. Like, where does that leave the state of the program on a larger scale outside of just this season?
Well, from a micro perspective, it leaves it where it was, last year, which is you are building almost not even a program, but a team year after year. You're living year to year in the portal. And when you live that way, the level of consistency is hard to bank on because you don't know from year to year what kind of players you're gonna get, whether they're gonna be the kinds of players who coalesce into a tournament bid. And if you mention, well, Nebraska should have more NIL money then, we'll look at Indiana. Indiana has a ton of NIL money, and they're the same way. They're living portal to portal, and it's not working. And so you have to just expect that if you're going to do this, you're going to add 6 to 7 guys a year out of the portal. You don't know exactly what you're going to get until they start playing all the games. And I think one of the things that we've seen from this particular season or iteration of the portal is they probably didn't get exactly what they wanted in terms of rim protection. And I know there's no way they can be thrilled with the shooting of anybody but Connor Asik. Like, that's just not what when they went into the portal to get the guys that they got, I'm sure they hoped they'd get a little bit of rink mask shooting ability from Andrew Morgan. And he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been rink masked. And I know that they were hoping that, Worcester would be at least a 30% three-point shooter, and Gavin Griffiths would be a 40% three-point shooter, and he doesn't even play.
I wonder if he should play. So, I shouldn't even. I assume that they're trying to win games, but Griffin's absence is a little puzzling when you need shooting, but they see him every day, and I don't.
Well, yeah, I think it is puzzling. They have chosen. Here's what I would say. Up until the USC game, I do think Fred is an optimist. I sense that about him, even though he has sort of a dry humor. That I don't think until that USC game there was a real like, oh boy, this is a real mess. I think there was, we almost beat Maryland. Probably should have beat Rutgers, but we lost because we weren't tough enough. And then they lost to USC. And again, they didn't make any shots against USC. And then I thought on Sunday, they tried to tinker with the starting lineup, putting Hoiberg and Morgan in there, which is just frankly putting way more offense in there. And it didn't work. And maybe they need to put Connor Segan in the starting lineup because, they do. Maybe they need to be able to have a true three-point threat to start the game and maybe worry a little less about defense. They didn't really play much defense against Wisconsin early in that game. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do. It's a challenging situation because this is the team that they have. 2 years ago, they were in kind of the same situation, but then they had a couple guys get hurt, and everybody thought the season was going to be lost. And it was at that moment that Casey started playing because he wasn't playing that much. And then all of a sudden he started playing a lot, and they got good. So I don't know exactly what the larger change here will be, but I think they're in a tough spot. I'm sure they thought they were headed toward the NCAA tournament with the formula they had, and now there's a 6-game losing streak. Now they have Illinois, and Illinois is a super athletic team that has been difficult for Fred Hoiberg to beat. I don't know that he's beaten Illinois since he arrived at Nebraska. I can't remember.
Sam, so I want to go back to something you said about the way these teams have been constructed kind of on a year-to-year basis. In your opinion, is that something Nebraska has to do based on the current landscape of college basketball, or is that something that this staff chooses to do because they think it gives them the best chance?
Well, you don't have to do it, but if you start with the young core and then you sprinkle in 1 or 2 transfers, you have to have some patience as those players get up to speed. I think what Nebraska has chosen to do, for example, is redshirt Braden Frager and Nick Janowski. And, they're redshirting them now and developing them as players. And I think the hope is next season, those 2 guys are able to play a lot and they'll contribute and I don't think be starters, but that they'll be major pieces to the team. And so I think they're trying to do a little bit of the young development, but probably need to get a post or 2 that you can do that with. And they haven't had a ton of luck there. In the current landscape of college basketball, I do think it's hard. Creighton's done a pretty good job of getting young guys and developing them and then bringing them along. And then they become the identity of the program while you add key pieces along the way. And, Creighton added Stephen Ashworth, and that was huge. They added Isaac Trout as a young guy. That was huge. Jackson McAndrews, a true freshman. And everybody can see, oh, boy, when that guy's a junior, he's going to average about 17 a game, and he's going to be hard to stop. So I think Creighton's got a good template, but they had more historical success than Nebraska. And, Greg McDermott, I'm sure, will say, hey, Doug McDermott helped us a lot, with getting things off the ground when Greg got there. So, you have to credit Greg McDermott, and you also have to credit Doug McDermott, who did a lot for that program in the 4 years he was there, and he set a standard that allowed Creighton to recruit more players like Doug McDermott to the hilltop.
Last basketball question for me, Sam, before I get to the DC carousel that I think is about to hit college football. If you're Nebraska and you said this is the roster they have, which it clearly is, and you've got to finish this out, is there a place or places where you could see Nebraska changing it up a little bit, where they simply maybe get fouled more, right? Or you play guys that maybe will put it on the deck where you could get to the foul line, or you could change it up a little bit since we're trying to force the shooting issue and making shots from 3. What if they change a little bit of a change in mindset where you try to get to the rim and maybe get to the foul line a little bit more?
They were doing that pretty well earlier in the year, and they certainly tried to do that against USC. Juwan Gary, made a lot of plays at the rim and probably had his best overall game as a scorer against USC. And so they were successful in creating some of those opportunities. I do think that once you get in the Big Ten, there's just not as many calls, and so it's harder to get to the free throw lines. And some of the teams just defend really well. Wisconsin's a little bit like Creighton. They just don't foul that much. And I think Purdue's kind of the same way. And so, I think Nebraska has tried to do that. And I think Fred has created some actions that get that going. I think what he would say is that aside from USC, which got beat a little bit on some of those plays, most of the defenses are like, we're just going to take this away from you. And we're not going to let Juwan Gary get a free run into the lane. And, Bryce can take it from the top of the key and dribble in, and that's successful at times, but you can only do that so many times. So I would say that defenses are taking some of that away from Nebraska. And so they're probably going to have to hit a few more shots, and this is what Fred talked about on Thursday. They have to play incredible defense and create offense off of it by getting turnovers and getting out in transition. And so, they haven't been able to do that very well either. Their defense just hasn't been very good. And when it's not very good, then you're not creating any offense there. And then you're also struggling in the half court. So it's a bad recipe right now, and they have to find a way to get out of it. I would not bet on them beating Illinois. I think there's a chance they can beat Oregon and Washington on the road. It might not be the worst thing to get out to the West Coast and around some very sparse crowds and play through some of your struggles.
Sam, before we get you out of here, I was going to, people are different thought processes on Jim Knowles going to Penn State. Obviously, Allen goes to Clemson, and I think this DC thing is going to get hot. I think Knowles was kind of the key piece, even OCs, depending on what happens with Chip Kelly. And let me ask you something, because people will make it about money, and I don't. Clearly, Ohio State could pay him the most, so I don't think it was about money. A couple of weeks or a couple of days ago, he's rumored to go to Norman, and I think the folks in Oklahoma thought that was going to be the deal. He winds up at a team that, Ohio State's beat Penn State 8 straight, right?
Yeah.
So do you think it's a money thing? Knowing Ohio State could pay him the most, what do you get with Knowles going to Penn State, first of all, and then what do you think it means for the rest of the defensive coordinator carousel, which is probably about to get started?
I think that Ohio State has an interesting situation now where, again, they've done the thing that they wanted to do. They've been able to achieve, getting that national championship. And there's going to be a now what quality to that program. Like they're going to have to find the motivation again beyond beating Michigan. Like they play Texas to start the season. Well, they just beat Texas. So now they got to go beat Texas again. I don't know where the game's at. It's either at Ohio State or Texas. And they got to go do that again. And one of the things that impresses me so immensely about the Chiefs is they're just able to do it over and over again. They have kicked the crap out of the AFC West for 8 or 9 years, and it's just so good at doing it. They're such professionals in the way they go about their business. And that's what Ohio State's going to have to do. And so, like, everybody in that operation, having now celebrated, and Urban Meyer knows this because he used to talk about it. Now you got to go back to, like, hating life again. Like, a week after you win the title, you got to go back to being like, all right, what do we have to do to beat Texas? And then what do we have to do to beat Michigan? And what am I going to do for the next hundreds of days to think about doing that? Whereas at Penn State, there's still one more thing out there. And I think there's something that he can help them do that they haven't done yet. And I don't think working for James Franklin is easier than working for Ryan Day. And the reason I say that is because James Franklin has gone through a lot of coordinators, and people can check it. I think he's pretty hard on coordinators, actually. But But I think there's something that Jim Newell can do for James Franklin, and I think that's probably appealing. It would be fun to go and get it done at a different school within the same league, to bring players to something they've never been to before. And if Jim Holtz doesn't want to be a head coach, then what better than to go to a competitor? And he's not like some sort of Ohio State lifer, so like he doesn't have any loyalty to the Buckeyes.
And he's from Philly too, so
yeah, like I think what I would say is that it's just going to be challenging for Ohio State to pull all those emotions back up again and do the whole thing again. Like, you got to go to the same place, and you got to dig all the way deep, and you got to tell Jeremiah Smith, hey, last year wasn't good enough. And I mean, that's not true. It was. So like you got to find new things to get motivated by. And when you're so much better than everybody else and your season's coming down to 1 or 2 games, you got to find your why. And if Brian Day stays, and it looks like he's going to, I don't know, there's no jobs left. I mean, I guess the Saints, then he might want to talk to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes about, where do you guys find your why? Like, where do you find it? And how do you get it? And how do you do that when you don't have these rivals like they do in the SEC? The only rival Ohio State truly has is Michigan. And they'll be plenty pumped up for that game, but will they have 1 or 2 losses before then? I don't know.
Sam, talking through all this, does it, and we've heard a lot more from this guy in the last year than we probably had in the 15 prior to that, but like, does it make you appreciate Nick Saban anymore and just his ability to year after year after year, not only
just replace guys,
not just find his why and replace guys, but to get everybody else in the room on that same page as well?
Yeah, you really do come to appreciate the work that he was able to do over the course of how many years it was, 15
years. Even if you hate Alabama, right? Yeah. Like, you still have to just be like, holy cow.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that he kind of had working for him, and again, I'm not trying to say that he didn't do a great job, he had players, but there was always another team down there. There's always Georgia, or always LSU, or always Florida. Like, there was always another team that threatened and sometimes succeeded in making you second place. And the other thing is, Saban wanted out once the NIL era hit. Like that, he's I don't want to go through, and Ohio State's going to have to go through this with Jeremiah Smith. What are you going to pay that kid? He's probably the best player in college football going into next year. What are you going to pay him? Like what are you going to pay that guy, and how does that affect what you do? And it's not just a scholarship; it's the whole thing. If Nick Saban had to decide between paying Jerry Jeudy or Devonta Smith, I don't know how it would have gone. What he had in his corner is like, you come here and we'll get you ready for the NFL. Now with NIL, you got to pay these guys money, and that's not easy. And who would you pay more, Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs? I know the answer to that for me, but you got to probably pay them both several $1 million.
That's Sam McKewon.
Who would you pay more?
Shoot, don't ask me. I'm taking Downs.
Yeah,
okay.
I can always go get me another good wideout. Downs is a game changer. Not that Smith isn't. They're just easier to find.
Those two players beat Nebraska.
Yeah.
Caleb Downs made so many good plays in that game, and obviously Jeremiah Smith made the one play. Those two guys, Nebraska outplays Ohio State in almost every other way in that game, but Ohio State had the two best players. So, they got to find a why, though. I mean, Caleb Downs could transfer. He could go wherever he wants. So this is going to be challenging for Ohio State. It'll be fun to watch and see if they can repeat.
That is Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. DB.
Yes, sir.
The Ohio State Buckeyes might be replacing both coordinators.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. People are gonna want Chip.
Chip Kelly's hot again.
Yeah, I wonder. So many different things could be at play here. I don't. This is talking to one of my guys on social media last night through DM, and he was kind of just talking about how, big boy football is played in blue bloods and how you kind of go get coaches and stuff. And I think the weird thing about this one is on the surface, it looks like, ooh, fantastic coup by Penn State.
To get Knowles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Guy held in pretty high regard. But there's just something about this that doesn't seem right, in my opinion. I think it's more than just Penn State made a power play. They got their guy, right?
Because you're right. If Ohio State wanted to match the money, they could have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is an increase, right? But if they wanted to, they would have.
Yeah, I mean, and, Knowles didn't go to the championship ceremony celebration. It's just awkward.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the same thing that I thought all year about the lack of
Cohesion.
Defensively almost all year.
Him and Johnson.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it was listen, this is just talk radio.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it was a Larry Johnson power play. Maybe it was it's so exhausting and so unappreciative to be there. Maybe it's what Sam was alluding to. It's
easier to find a little fire.
A program like that, the why, could be so exhausting or ever changing when you're on the chase. But I do think their candidates and their coordinators, it's interesting to say the least, because it's clearly a good job.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's the Ohio State, right?
And also, to Sam's point, Day doesn't strike me as a terribly difficult guy to work for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I don't
and
either.
if so, it would probably be more on the offensive side.
Sure.
Than
Because
it
that's
would be,
his
then
area.
it would be defensive.
Yeah.
But Knowles was the same guy. I mean, just ask like Google. I mean, Knowles was on Google.
Google him.
Knowles was rumored to be going to Norman.
Yeah. Like,
Well, his fiance is. I'm like,
that was the storyline.
I'm like, why would Knowles go to Norman?
Yeah.
But I also wondered, why Allen would go to Clemson. But according to our guy AJ, who can read and Google a lot better than we can in 5 minutes, went through a laundry list of
Hey, I Googled super fast today.
why Allen left. It's just, and I do think Sam's right about like James Franklin and coordinators. Like that's, I don't know. It seems like that would be very, very difficult
to work for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it, like on the surface, and I don't know, poop from Shinola, just deductive.
Sure.
Why guys leave? How many guys have left?
Yeah, if you're churning through a decent amount of guys and they're not leaving for head coaching jobs.
Now, I'd also tell you though, to go get a guy coming off the second half of that season defensively,
that's a coup.
And go from a top 5 to a top 5. I mean, because let's be honest, I think both teams should be season top 5,
100%.
Some order of Penn State, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and Penn State, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and
who else you want to throw in there? You want to throw in?
I'm gonna maybe Notre Dame.
Fair.
Notre Dame's 5 or 6.
You have to figure out what you're doing at quarterback.
Georgia, Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, I think are safe.
I think so.
So you can. I will listen to Oregon. I will listen to. Who did I just say?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Are you listening to either? I assume the jury's out on Bama enough that we don't want to put them up there.
No, I would not put Bama there.
I wouldn't either.
I would probably make if
Ole Miss, LSU, any of the other usual suspects.
I would make a case for LSU before I would Alabama.
Fair.
Just because I mean I get it. You're bringing back Meyer, and whether I like him or not is inconsequential.
It's a little consequential. Neither one of us like him that much.
But no, I don't think it's Bama.
I don't either.
So I think it's safe to say those are your 6.
Some version of those 6, yeah.
So, I mean, Knowles is going from – but, again, Ohio State's beat Penn State 8 straight.
Going from 1 to 4 or 2 to 5. I mean, he's – but – and, I don't want to say the money isn't a thing because he is making another $1 million. It's a 50% raise, right? We're going from 2 to 3. But like you said, if Ohio State wanted to pay him that, that's no problem, right? They shake out a couch cushion and they're good to go.
Oh yeah.
But I know he probably does, but this kind of goes back to the Liam Cohen conversation. Like, where does Larry Johnson get that much juice? Is it just the recruiting?
Yeah, I think Larry Johnson has
as much juice as he wants.
Yep,
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think Larry Johnson has only a few peers.
Sure, fair,
and able to go get guys. I think Tosh is in that discussion. And, there's only a handful of guys I think
that are on that level.
Yeah.
So Larry Johnson gets whatever he wants.
Yep.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, so if it's a power play by Johnson, he's like, hey, I don't
know. I just think
no, but if it were
something just
doesn't smell quite right.
Yeah.
It is a weird move.
It's not.
Although I will say,
I am pretty convinced it's not money.
I will say
because now Ohio State may not think Knowles is worth $3 million because they know his real value better than anyone.
Sure, because they've seen
it, and they know how much of it was a
Johnson,
correlation or not, or whomever so their benchmark is they know value versus worth better than anyone.
Maybe they say, hey, if we get this same accumulation of talent, we could win with a $2 million.
Now you do have two high profile programs in very, very close proximity that just happened to play for the national championship that are both looking for coordinators.
Yeah.
Now whether Notre Dame goes and names a co-guy or they go get Chris Ash or whomever.
Yeah.
Like to have Notre Dame and Ohio State both be in the market for
Ohio State's
big-time defensive
sandwich,
coordinators.
right? You have Notre Dame on the one side, you have Penn State on the other side. Both of them were looking for DCs. You got Ohio State right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Like the other thing I do wonder about though is, and you would have a better sense for this than I do, I think.
I mean, how many years is Oklahoma gonna be third in the pecking order on the national scene for a DC?
Not a lot, probably. It's probably not a lot.
I mean, it's gonna be interesting.
But there are some guys that enjoy the build more than they like the mountaintop, right? Is it possible Jim Knowles is like, okay, I've done everything I can with this Ohio State defense. Let's go look at another challenge. Like, is that, I mean, that's a thing for some guys, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the case with Knowles, but I think we've seen that where some guys just like the climb and other guys like to, play king of the hill. Maybe that's Knowles. I don't know. But that is a very different mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to agree with me. I'm
processing, believe me.
Usually you don't default to agreeing with me. So
yeah, that's not on auto. I think you just never know with what guys are really after. But with Knowles in this situation at Penn State, I think money would have to be down the ways a little. Because Ohio State can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
By the way, can I go back to something with pay?
Yeah.
Would you pay Downs or Smith?
Downs.
Yeah, me too.
Me
too.
I think while acknowledging Jeremiah Smith is incredible, I think you and I are less enamored with him than a lot of the national public.
Sure.
He's very, very, very good.
I don't. Yeah.
I think I would take Ryan Williams over Jeremiah Smith.
For me, it's easy. I've seen Olave.
That's what I mean.
I've seen this laundry list of wide receivers that have been at Ohio State, and Hartline's still there, right?
Yeah. So they're probably going to be fine.
I'll pay.
I'll take my chances with Hartline.
I'll pay Downs.
So Hartline is basically offense Larry Johnson, right?
Yeah. See, I mean,
right? I mean,
can call his shot.
Like, he gets to do whatever he wants to do. And I go there and I assume that Ohio State's going to have 4 first-round wide receivers.
And if I don't want some sort of disproportionate payroll, I don't even know if Ohio State cares. But given the choice, man, I'm
taking Downs over Smith.
And hear my heart. I'm not saying you just roll out of the rack and go get a Jeremiah Smith.
No.
But Ohio State's track record has more Jeremiah Smith than they have Caleb Downs.
They've kind of just rolled out of the rack and gotten like 8 Jeremiah Smiths over the last decade. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, and we're brought to you by our friends over at Centris Federal Credit Union. They're federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. If you're looking for a new way to elevate your finances in 2025, Centris Federal Credit Union might be the right choice for you. Go check out centrisfcu.org. You can talk to their experts, whether you're just looking for regular bank accounts, checking, savings, need a car loan, mortgage, whatever your financial needs are, they can advise you properly. Check out centrisfcu.org. DB.
What's up?
How you doing?
I was just trying to sort through the top 10 and, well, a couple things.
Yeah.
Do you really want to know? Because this is.
I do.
What's that?
You were processing a lot during the break.
I was. The whole defensive coordinator thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to be out in front and be done? Do you want to see like what shakes out on the open market? And how late would I be uncomfortable needing to replace coordinators?
I am at the point where I would be uncomfortable if I'm Oklahoma, if that's the question.
Yeah. I mean, both teams that played in the national championship game are a little bit in transition.
I think it.
Were you surprised to see Golden go back to Cincy?
Not really. I don't know. Al Golden didn't seem like he was going to be permanent there.
Will we come to a point?
Yeah.
Where the luster of coaching against the best
wears off. With the degree of difficulty that it takes to coach in college. Will that be some sort of different challenge? So here's why I think that's important depending on what position you're in, right? Because I think coordinators have become not that they're easy, but I think they've become the easiest job in college. Because a lot of these coordinators are not going to be tasked with the recruiting stuff that all the other guys are, right? Coordinator to me is sort of the golden ticket in college now. That's the place you want to be because head coach has all the program running to deal with, right? All the position coaches and staffers are your recruiting gurus now. Coordinators are kind of the only guys that just get a coach ball. Like that's about it. I think being a coordinator in college is the place you want to be, especially if you're making $2-3 million a year now, and you're like, man, that used to be head coach money.
I kind of feel like that about being a coordinator in the NFL, though.
Yeah, I don't think they're terribly different jobs. I really don't. So I think you might see a lot of movement back and forth, but I do think the allure of coaching against the best probably isn't the thing anymore.
Yeah, Saban talked about that a little on the Pivot podcast. I felt like
that was pretty good.
I agree. I thought
he covered a lot of stuff there.
And you know what? The thing that I like is he didn't talk as though like he was the standard. Like he admitted things he would have done differently along the way, which I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a regular, like that's how I
like his perspective.
I do. I really do. And he alluded to like the value of coaching against the best at the highest level.
Yeah.
And if he had it to do over again, he probably doesn't leave LSU. He literally called that decision
the biggest regret of his career.
Yep. Leaving LSU for Miami.
It sounded
and he said the day of, he had just told his AD,
yeah,
I want to stay and develop kids. And he said he took the job anyway.
And his agent was like, well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He said, do you want to be Bear Bryant or Vince Lombardi?
Yeah,
and he goes, Bear Bryant, without a question.
Yeah.
And he's like, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he took the Miami job anyway.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're in – I also think it's different depending on where you're from. And I don't know like where West Virginia and Nick Saban kind of fit in with that. But I look at this and I go, okay, to me, growing up in Nebraska, I get the NFL is technically a higher level of football, but college football is the zenith here, right? Like college football is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up here,
like you'd rather be the head coach of the University of Nebraska than the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, 100%. Like growing up here, if I had been a football coach, being the head coach of the University of Nebraska would have been the thing, not competing, not coaching in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right now, maybe you get there and you feel differently. I don't know, but I also think Saban brought it up in the Pivot podcast with the developing players, developing kids. Rules kind of talked about it through his couple years here. Like sometimes you have to have a self-awareness of what your strengths are, right? We've talked a lot about this with Nebraska basketball the past couple of weeks. Like maybe you could coach at the NFL level. Maybe you do have that skill set. Is that your best skill set? Like, is that the thing you're best at? Is the X's and O of football the thing you're best at, or is it in developing young people and helping them along their way? Is that the thing you're best at? Because there is a difference, and if you can have the self-awareness enough to know what your strength is, if you can be Juwan Gary and be like, hey, I probably shouldn't go 1 for 5 from 3. I should just put my head down and be a bully in the paint, even though I'm a guard. I should just be a bully and not worry about, I know I can make threes on occasion. Like, maybe I could survive in the NFL as a head coach and be good enough and get the paycheck and compete against the best. But you know the thing I'm best at is putting my head down, getting to the rim, getting to the foul line, getting offensive rebounds, getting putbacks. Like, if I'm Juwan Gary, I need to have that self-awareness. And sometimes you don't know it until you make the mistake, like Nick Saban or Coach Rule for that matter. And they go, I think probably wasn't for me.
I think you have to be at a place, though, where that matches. The expectation level plays to your strengths. Because I think the popular or the low-hanging fruit consensus could be like you're conceding one for the other. Well, if you're a developmental guy and this is where you are with the program and you're about developing kids, then you're not interested in winning championships.
Yeah, that's not the same thing.
But, I mean, you could easily see where.
Sure. That's what I used to, honestly, full disclosure, that's how I used to feel about when people would talk with Nebraska.
And say there should be a developmental program?
Not just that, but also when people would always talk about Tom Osborne and, like, the process, right? If you're process-oriented, the results would take care of themselves. When I was younger, that felt like a loser mentality to me. Be like, no, you need to focus on the wins. Go get wins, right? But that's not when I got older and a little bit more mature, not saying I'm real mature yet, but a little bit more mature, I understood that focusing on the process wasn't not focusing about winning and losing. It was actually focusing about winning and losing way more, but you're talking about focusing on winning and losing in every single step along the way, not just one time, once a week, 12 times a year. You're focusing on winning and losing. Hey, did I wake up on time today? That's a win. Did I make it to weights on time today? That's a win. Did I get my protein and calorie intake right today? That's a win. Did I get to my study hall and my classes and stuff today? That's a win. The process is actually focused way more on wins and losses than being results-oriented is. It's just focusing on different and more frequent wins and losses in the day-to-day. And that, to me, is the thing that I didn't realize when I was younger.
So I think Freeman is the first coach that we've seen in a long time that was the closest to talking about the whole young man and development and the whole student athlete that's made it this far. Because we hadn't really heard that from a lot of other coaches. We weren't really hearing. That's not the message we really were getting from Kirby. It kind of was.
Do you think it is from Harbaugh?
Yeah,
he talks about it differently.
I would give you that. In a roundup, yes, I would give you that.
He talks about it differently publicly, but I think that's what he's about.
So I don't know.
And I do think that's what Saban's about, if I'm being honest.
I do think he enjoys that the most.
I think that's the thing he's actually about.
Yeah.
And now he was so successful that it's really easy to be like, oh, well, he's results-oriented, whatever. But if you actually listen to him, and not just after retirement, but if you'll go back and listen to some of the stuff he would talk about, because some of it started making the rounds on the internet from these symposiums and stuff he would do, like, that's what he's about.
Yeah, and I remember we talked to his center, Barrett, and he said his greatest asset, and this was at the time he hadn't become the monster yet, though he was well on his way.
He was only a couple natties in at that point.
He said he could deprogram high-level guys.
Which is hard to do.
Like he said he could just tear you down at the very beginning. Did you hear the funny story he told about Derrick Henry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where Derrick Henry is a true freshman coming out. He's this monster, right?
Yeah.
And the offensive coordinator, is just ripping him a new one because he can't pick up a blitz and he's not doing X, Y, and Z right, whatever. And Derrick's like, hey, I don't know anything about football.
Well, Saban said he had to go he felt bad.
Like put his arm around him.
He
said touch his neck.
Yeah, he said, I got to go bail this guy out. He's getting killed.
Yeah. And Derrick's like, hey, they literally only taught me, here's the ball, go run. He's like, I don't know anything about football. You're going to have to give me a minute.
And who's the other back that I just watched in the podcast? He wasn't on Pivot. He was on somebody else's show. And he was talking about waiting his turn. I can see him in my head. He wore 34. Just got done playing. He was there for a while. Kind of spelled. Then he was the guy.
Scarborough?
Nope. I mean recent.
34.
Anyway, he's talking about how, like, one of the things that he liked about Saban was it was always about the little things. He's talking about loafing on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a star. He was this prize recruit coming out of high school, and he's dead dog tired because they were trying to indoctrinate him into what it meant to be being the feature back at Alabama. He said he was dead dog tired, and he had to go turn around and play special teams, and he was loafing. And he talked about how Saban kept playing the film over and over, how he kept loafing, and he's like, "Look, son, you will never, ever, 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 ever play for me loafing like this." And he was like, it was after X amount of carries and stuff. And he said that was kind of the Saban that nobody ever talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think listening to him kind of reflect on what got him out of coaching. And I'm not like, you weren't paying players to begin with, but it just doesn't seem like that was ever what it was about for him. So even though it's in the NIL market and maybe he didn't feel like competing, I don't think that makes what the essence of what he wanted to be any less disingenuous.
No, I thought, and I think he said this, is he was too tired to do things the way he wanted to do things.
Yeah.
And I believe him. He's his mid-70s. Like, that's got to be hard. I'm too tired to do things half the time now. Not really a morning person, DB. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News about the NFL. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News to talk a little NFL. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. Vinny, you're going to laugh, so bear with the question. And we bet on your answer. So this is how good I think Saquon Barkley is. I asked Ravi, I said, hey, if the Commanders could only change one thing, do you think they would pick taking care of the ball or being able to stop Saquon Barkley? And I get it. It sounds funny because you always want to take care of the ball. My partner says stop Saquon. And at first I wasn't going to argue with him, but I was like, no. Like they would clean up the turnovers. What would you say? Stop Saquon or don't turn the ball over?
Well, I'll say that Saquon, when he had the long touchdown, the Commanders were still in the game. And they were still in the game beyond that. But when they had the turnovers, that's when they took themselves out of the game. So I'll just preface that. I think with a guy like Saquon Barkley, if you told Commanders fans we're going to hold him to less than 150 yards rushing in this game, you'd say, okay, we're in business. We might have a chance of winning it. But what happened was the turnovers happened, a lot of short fields for the Eagles. A.J. Brown decided to come through in a big game finally.
But with the lead, they also stopped giving him the ball a ton, too. They could have featured him a little more if they wanted to.
I think they could have, yeah. I don't know what that ankle was, but maybe then they saw the 60-yard run. You're right. I mean, there's some things that we're not sure if he had been on the field a little bit more had they have changed things. But I think once you get that snowball effect where you fall too far behind and it's kind of a little bit predictable on what the Commanders had to do, I think it really put them in a bad spot. Now, I think the one that hurt them really was in the second half and just really kind of they had some momentum going there. We thought, okay, they might get back in the game, down only 11, and that was the end of that. And then it was a snowball toward the Eagles side. So, again, the Commanders still young, learning how to win. They weren't a big turnover team, but the funny thing is their turnovers really, piled up after. And then the Jaden Daniels interception was just him trying to be desperation to make plays there, right? I mean, he was playing a pretty good game. I think he just got out of his element when they got too far behind.
So, Vinny, I was kind of making this argument last week that Washington, I guess I'll ask it to you this way. Do you think Washington is more like a stepping stone from this NFC Championship game or kind of some of those random one-offs we've seen make it like a Jaguars or a Jets or a couple of the Falcons teams that There's a Chargers AFC Championship game at one point. Like, we've seen some randos show up in championship games. Do you think the Commanders are more building, or that we'll end up viewing this as a one-off?
I mean, you look at the modern era, and I think you can put the Bengals in the same category. They had the one run to the Super Bowl. But I think the Bengals will be back at some point because their quarterback play is that good. And then I think the Commanders have shown that their quarterback play is that good. Do you have a it guy at quarterback? I mean, that's all the difference, right? I mean, we can say that. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen continue to be denied of the Super Bowl and big moments here. But you know how successful their teams have been because of their level of quarterback play. And I think when you have Jane Daniels, I mean, you can argue that this was the best rookie season by any quarterback. I mean, he was playing pretty well until, again, the game got out of hand in the second half, and it was just too predictable there. But when you look at Jane Daniels, I mean, he's the guy that you circle and say, we can win a lot of games with this guy. And do you have him for a good 10 years? Probably, right? He has that factor where he's going to be around, and that's going to take you far. So it's not like you had fluky quarterback situation or things that just broke your way in all these games. It's clear that they have a guy that they feel great about. And look, this year, I mean, they'll be a lot like the Lions, except they're year ahead, where they're going to have some money to spend on free agents. They can cut Marshawn Lattimore and get some money, extra money to spend there. So they're going to have a lot of capital in the draft and further improving their team. And they weren't all that far from getting to the Super Bowl with this team. So Daniels is going to help them travel far going forward.
I'm going to get to the Mahomes thing here in a second at quarterback for the Chiefs with this organization, but I'm going to set it up this way, Vinnie. If you believe that 9 of the 16 teams kind of have their guy, right? Nix, Herbert, Mahomes, Stroud, Burrow, Lamar, May, Tua, Allen. And you're the other 7 teams in the AFC. What are you doing to narrow the gap when it's kind of clearly been proven that it's just what you said? It's about the quarterback play. What would you do to narrow the gap if you're those other 7 teams in the AFC?
Yeah, I mentioned it. I mean, even when the Tom Brady era was there, other teams were winning Super Bowls. We did get room for Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger.
All Hall of Famers.
Yeah, they were all able to win Super Bowls, even Drew Brees, right, to get in there and not have an MVP. They all had a chance to win a Super Bowl in that window. So, yeah, I think you have to keep trying. If you don't feel like you have the guy, I think the biggest thing is to quit early, right? If the Texans, for example, they just fired their defensive or offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. If they see that this is a C.J. Stroud issue, that it wasn't just a sophomore slump, I'm not saying they give up on C.J. Stroud that early, but you have to think about what are we going to do next, right? If this guy is not going to reach that level, he's going to be pretty good, but is he going to be Lamar, Mahomes, Allen, Joe Burrow good, right? If he's not that level, you're probably not going to have a shot to crack through and win a Super Bowl at any point. So, look, I think the Steelers realized that pretty quickly with Kenny Pickett. He wasn't going to be there. They tried their best, got back to the playoffs with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So their 2 little plans didn't work, so they'll probably go for a third plan, try to look for that franchise quarterback again in the draft. So that's what you have to keep doing. If you're not sold on the guy, keep going. The one thing I would say what doesn't work is saying, I'm going to sign a Sam Darnold right off free agency. I don't think the Vikings intend to do that. They wanted to see really if J.J. McCarthy was that it guy, right? They just didn't have that circumstance and he got hurt. But now I've seen Darnold. I don't want him because then it's like a Geno Smith, Daniel Jones situation where you're paying a guy for an above-average breakout season. When are you going to get that top-level play to really say you can win a Super Bowl with that guy? And I think it's harder for teams, I think, like the Buccaneers and Lions, speaking about NFC teams, right, that they have a very good quarterback situation, but is it the transcendent quarterback situation that's going to put you over the top and get you into the Super Bowl? That's the question you have to ask yourself, and I think you can ask yourself that if you're any of these AFC teams that don't have those guys I mentioned.
Weird connection, but on the heels of the Baseball Hall of Fame last week, I was talking about having to adjust our eye from 300 game winning pitchers, and is 190 to 200 the new 300 in baseball that's so numbers driven with how the game is played. Will we have to similarly, Vinny, adjust gold jackets and kind of Hall of Fame talk with quarterbacks in the Mahomes era, knowing that there's going to be a lot of good guys that won't have beaten Mahomes?
Yeah, I think that's the case in any situation. I think you have to analyze, is this quarterback part of the group that's there? I mean, the one guy I forgot to mention was Rodgers. He was able to get a ring then, but when you look at Rodgers and Breeze, or even John Elway in relation to Joe Montana, or even Dan Marino, who didn't win a ring but lost in the Super Bowl to Joe Montana, that, look, there's still room for great quarterback play. Some things just don't happen. Breaks, because in the end, yeah, Patrick Mahomes is there, but the Chiefs are an excellent organization. They don't win unless that defense makes play after play in key situations. They're just a well-coached team. So I think when you have that combination of coach and quarterback, like we saw with Brady Belichick and now we see with Reed and Mahomes, it's extremely hard to bring down. But, yeah, I think the interesting case is we'll have one this year with Eli Manning. I mean, when you look at his overall body work, not great, but he was in 2 Super Bowls, and his defense actually helped win those Super Bowls, but he might get in just because he has 2 rings and he was part of those teams. And then you get to Matthew Stafford, again, another defense-driven Super Bowl. When you look at his entire body of work, not a lot of accolades there. But when you look at it, are those guys good enough to get in? And if those guys are fine to get in because their teams made a run, because they had defense and all that, then you're opening up a whole other thing as where, okay, some of these guys didn't benefit from that defense or those big moments to have that opportunity to kind of get that national spotlight to get into the Hall of Fame. So it'll be interesting. If those 2 guys get it, I think there's going to be a lot of things that could happen, because then you go back to players that were really good in there and won MVPs, like a Steve McNair. Then you look at Matt Ryan, whose defense let down a big lead that, if Matt Ryan is an MVP and a Super Bowl champion, we're probably talking about him like Kurt Warner, and he's in the Hall of Fame, right? So I just think this whole debate is going to continue. The one thing I think that's different from the MLB and the Cooperstown and all that and what they're doing in this is it really comes down to lobbying for a guy and selling a guy. It's a little bit different there. It's not just pure voting, but it's also who's covering this person, who's going to push this narrative. So it'll be interesting to see how many of the modern guys, however, get into this Hall of Fame, because this is the best quarterback era we've ever seen.
Vinnie, I was talking to Ravi. It's been a long time in professional sports that I felt like this, so I'm just curious to get a frame of reference for you. My only real equivalents are individual sports, where I felt like, watching Serena at her peak, like if you didn't break serve, you're going to be in for a long day, or, a couple key putts against Tiger, where it's like, okay, that didn't go your way, that was your chance. When I'm watching the Chiefs, and it's early, right, and I see a ball ripped away from Kincaid, or, an errant throw to Samuel, in the on a little speed out or something like that. And in my head, I automatically fast forward to, shoot, man, that at some point that's going to cost you. You talked about the completeness of the Chiefs, right? Front office, Spags, Reed, Mahomes, right? Chris Jones. They're really, really complete. Do you remember, or is it kind of hyperbole, where when teams that they're playing don't make plays, you just assume at some point it's going to cost them, regardless of when it happens in a game?
Yeah, I mean, there's the Chiefs are going to take advantage of every mistake you make.
It's incredible.
And the Bills, to their credit, it was a rare fumble and a mistake by the Chiefs. They did take advantage of that. But, again, how many opportunities are you going to have to knock them out? And you look at the stats in this game. I broke it down in Sporting News that these stats are very similar for both teams. There was not much difference. If you looked at the box score and you just looked at the stats without the score, you might say, hey, this game was pretty even. It was. I mean, it came down to field goal. But you say, what was the difference in that game? You dig deeper. I think it's those moments that are just there that the Chiefs execute at the right times where the Bills did not, and that's the difference.
Starting with Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. Vinnie, as we kind of sit here and we're talking about trying to find, a quarterback and moving on quickly from guys that maybe aren't it, I can't help but kind of think, yeah, but none of them are going to catch Mahomes. And so I'm trying to think of, is there enough other places to make up ground against the Chiefs that, if you're Josh Allen and you're probably Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. You're probably as close as you're going to get to catching Mahomes.
I think you have to bully. Maybe the Eagles can bully them.
Yeah, like what other areas are there where other teams can try and catch them? Because if we're being honest, it's probably not going to be quarterback.
Yeah, I think what you have to do is try to be found all three phases, and I think that is hard to do because, again, the Chiefs also had a big return that changed the game as well. So, it's hard to do that.
2 weeks in a row, mind you.
Yeah, so they've had these plays that do that. So I think what you have to do is just play your game, be as clean as possible, get rid of the penalties, get rid of the turnovers, execute everything that's right in front of you when they give you a little bit of opening, and take that. But, again, a lot of people just don't have that ability to execute consistently all around the board. I just think of also a lot of what they talked about in the broadcast is the preparation, right? And I think this team is prepared for everything they're going to see about the same level as the Patriots were, right? They were always a step ahead of every other team, kind of anticipating what they were going to do, and then they bring out wrinkles for the other team to stop that they can't handle, right? So, just involving McJuju Smith-Schuster all of a sudden, you have to worry about this guy making plays, or Marquise Brown early in the game,
or Samaje Perine when the game's on the line.
Yeah. I think there's an absolute trust in their system, their players, and I think there's a mutual understanding of that. And when you see the Chiefs, I don't want to say the Patriots way was better or worse, but the Chiefs way is pretty good. Like, everyone seems to buy it. And Kareem Hunt comes back. He comes back into the fold, and he is doing what he needs to do to win games and big games. So I think there's a culture that's created, and that comes down to Andy Reid, that is just hard to duplicate, where it's that balance, right? It's like an easygoing culture, but also intense. And they're having fun, but they're also very intense. And that's a hard thing to do for every team, to be on it every single week, but also love doing it like that every single week.
I promise, Vinny, I'm going to go national here with some of these coaching hires. But one more Super Bowl thing, because I've yet to talk about really the Eagles and kind of what they've been able to do. And at some point, we have to probably give the coaching staff a little credit, right? For every week they win, we still wonder when and if he's going to get fired. And the team seems to really, really rally as a unit. So I don't want to undersell coaching. When you look at the matchup, is there enough up there, do you think, where you can get away from having to talk quarterback play head-to-head in this football game?
Well, I think in the end, Patrick Mahomes is not going to play Jalen Hurts. He's playing the defense of the Eagles. And that's an interesting fact I was looking up yesterday, is that Vic Fangio has been, we know, with the Broncos. He was with the Dolphins last year in the playoffs, that game against the Chiefs. So when I look back, it hasn't been really good for Vic Fangio scheming against Mahomes. And I think you would say that a lot about a lot of defense coordinators, but in particular, his scheme has not been able to phase him as much, because we remember how we saw Bill Belichick and his scheme get Peyton Manning fits. But there's some schemes that don't really affect a quarterback, and Fangio's, that's my biggest concern, is if you can't really slow down Mahomes. By the way, they saved their first plus 30-point game of the season for the championship game.
Yeah, for the playoffs.
That's crazy. So I think Mahomes is on point now. The receivers are all together. They did it without Kelsey doing all that much. So when you think about all that they'll get it done with anybody. I think it's going to be a handful for that defense. And look, the Eagles' defense has been a great story. It's the reason they're in the Super Bowl beyond Saquon Barkley. Their big turnaround there with Fangio. But I think that matchup, that kind of chess game, I think that's going to favor Mahomes a lot, because he's seen plenty of it going back to Denver.
Vinny, so I've got to ask and move on from the Super Bowl matchup, because we got 2 weeks here. But this thing's been bothering me for like 3 days now. Can you explain the rise of Liam Cohen to me a little bit here? Because
you mean, how was the one that how did he get Balky out of there?
How was he the one that finally got Balky? I don't, 2 years ago, this guy was at Kentucky, at University of Kentucky, which is, I don't know, not a juggernaut. And then all of a sudden he's the hottest coordinator in the game outside of Ben Johnson and gets a GM fired. Where did we get here? Or was he just the straw that broke the camel's back in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think they wanted some change, and I think maybe the direction had to be different, right? I mean, they were trying these like ridiculous ways of trying to improve their team. The Urban Meyer experiment blew up. Then they said, okay, Doug Peterson, he won a Super Bowl, so let's see where we're at with that. You know, the Eagles saw a lot of the flaws of Doug Peterson as a coach, but they wanted to go in that direction. So I think it was time to blow things up. Look, Trent Baalke, okay, he had success with the 49ers several years ago, right? We need to move on, though. Like, it's not the same situation. We need a fresh look here. So when you look at Liam Cohen again, I think they just wanted a different way. And then when they said, okay, we're going to finally go this youthful route, develop our own quarterback, I mean, keep in mind, this team had Doug Marrone, too, as their head coach. So, I mean, they were really going deep and recycling some of these older guys. So I think when they went in this direction, it made sense to turn the page. And I think the 49ers are complaining because Baalke also helped Robert Saleh get there, and they needed him for their defense again.
Vinnie, and I get it, Moogs may be the guy. The Jets turned around. They did everything that they said that they weren't going to do, right? Looking for a guy with experience. We know the story of Glenn and Moogs. Was it awkward, or do you think it's a different style in terms of coaches being so instrumental on the heels of Cohen, on the heels of kind of, it seemed like Glenn was the one that interviewed Moogs, where coaches will have much more say about general managers as opposed to vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it works. And you kind of have to have it all in sync, right? I mean, and different teams have different levels of personnel control they give to their coach. I mean, with the Chiefs, it's pretty even here. I mean, Andy Reid has a lot of input on what they're trying to do, and there should be a collaboration, right? I mean, we definitely saw that in Washington here, right, with Peters and what he was doing for Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. There had to be input. There needed to be guys that could fit in the scheme and could deliver and were good values, and we saw that all across the board. So I think that is a big deal as well, like having that coach and that GM in sync and not just working and listening to the owner. One's listening to the owner, one's not. I think you got to put it all together.
Vinny, I was kind of joking half-heartedly until we had one of our guys do a little more research. I was talking about the Parcells tree and Peyton, and it kind of morphed into this John Elway talk with Spytech and what's happening in the command in Washington with their growth and now Moogs. You think we'll look back at Elway as an exec differently, as this tree that he has that have put these guys in the front office? It's growing by the day. It's kind of impressive. I mean, color me curious, especially with guys like Spytech, and to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's these guys getting new opportunities, and I think it's always good. And to just bring in fresh faces. I mean, we've seen guys come out of different places to be very successful. Brad Holmes was in PR and all that with the Rams, and he worked his way up all the way, right? So you want to be able to have different perspectives. And again, if you're around people who know what they're doing, you're going to also learn what you're doing. So I think that's the thing is like teams are just very cognizant of that. They've been like that with coaches, right? I mean, Liam Cohen, example, I mean, okay, everyone looked at the Kentucky on the resume, but the biggest thing that sold him to everybody was the fact that he worked with Sean McVay, right? So I think people are looking at parts of the resume. Who have they worked with? Where are we going with this guy? And what the success we can kind of expect. And I think, you go to Commanders, they got their GM from the 49ers. Yeah, tap into other teams that are successful, other individuals who are successful, and you're probably going to find success with the guys that were trained by them.
Vinny, real quick, just got a minute here left with you. I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk to you before the Super Bowl, so I do want to ask this. Is there an area where you think the Eagles have a clear advantage over the Chiefs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'd say definitely their running game right now. I mean, I know the Chiefs were effective at times with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco in that game, but a lot of those stats were padded by Mahomes and his unusual running there in that game against the Bills. But I think the Eagles have a little bit more reliable running game. The Chiefs were great against the run early, but they've had some issues in recent games. So that's the thing that they have. But the question is, can they stick with Barkley? Can they win with that this kind of game plan? Because in the end, Mahomes could push him off that game plan and force Hurts to kind of keep up with it.
That's Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. Vinnie, we appreciate the time as always, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinnie.
That's our guy, Vinnie Iyers from the Sporting News. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. It is time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Make sure you get to the casino in Lincoln or in Omaha and get out there, see everything Warhorse has to offer. You can also check out warhorsecasino.com or download the Warhorse app to find out about all their promotions and get a full list of house rules. That's warhorsecasino.com.
Well, I smell bet.
DB, what are you laughing at over there?
Because I don't appreciate.
You're getting a little,
I don't appreciate how you looked at me or how you answered the question.
You seem really hurt right now.
Nah, I think it was uncalled for.
You doing all right?
You seem very hurt right now. You're gonna be all right?
You doing okay?
I think it was uncalled for. I'm fine.
What did I do? Reset it for the people.
So I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, real time.
I'm just talking about college basketball. Talking about the best teams in the country. You know, who do we give it to?
We don't know.
It's tough. It's tough.
Don't feel good about it.
And you threw out Iowa State potentially. So I said, is Jones the most improved player in the country?
And I said maybe.
And so we started doing this deep dive. I'm just setting it for the people, okay?
Yeah.
Commander sweatshirt hoodie fan guy.
For the people.
And so I said, you know what? Maybe it's a guy like Neal. Neal is one of the most improved players in the country.
I would entertain it.
And then I said, well, how about Ashworth? Like, did you not see the feature? Like, nationally, they're talking about the dynamic duo and what he means to this team and how many minutes he's playing. And you gave me this look like you smelled something real foul, shaking it, like just dismissive that I was a fool for even insinuating. And I'm letting you know I didn't appreciate it.
I did think that was not a. I don't think he's the best player in the country. I don't think he's the most improved player in the country.
But you had to entertain it.
I don't think I do.
With that backcourt dominance they had last year.
Yeah, I don't think I have to entertain that he's the most improved player in the country.
Are you not entertained?
Okay,
to be fair, and I would say Neal is more improved than Ashworth, but to be fair, the numbers don't really reflect that for Neal. They're pretty similar.
Okay, what about Golden?
I would entertain Golden.
I mean, he's dominant.
I would entertain Golden.
They got Penn State today.
So the one Jones from Iowa State's the one that I look at and I go, I didn't know that was in there.
Yeah.
Like there's a version of.
Did you love the math that I did in my head over the?
I did. That was. Weekend? I think you have like a little bit of Rain Man in you. I mean that in a nice way, where you just like the.
That's a little off on a few, but I was close.
The numbers kind of just you see them in your head, like the Zach Galifianakis meme, where it's just. You're kind of beautiful minded.
Again, when you have the attention span of a guppy and you cannot study, but you have to be a good student if you want to breathe in your household, you better be able to do something, and memorize is one of them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair.
I cannot study.
I'm similar. I have a really hard time with like sitting down, studying, buckling down, but my memory's pretty good on certain things, so I get you. From a number standpoint, you've got a better argument with Ashworth than you've got with
Neal.
Than I've got with Neal.
Okay, so you looked at me like.
But I watched them and I go, okay, I saw more of this from Ashworth previously than I felt like I did of Neal. Like I think Neal is a bigger departure from what I knew of him than Ashworth is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like eyeball test tells me Neal. Statistically, you've got a better argument with Ashworth.
So I'm justified in feeling offended that you looked at me an idiot for
not an idiot.
Well, what was the term you were thinking of? If you cussed, you would have been like F no. Like that's how you looked at me. It is.
You actually the same.
We're being honest. Like you had a little snooty to you. You can't even deny it.
Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. Don't say it out loud. So wow. If you had to bet on who you think the best team in the country is, because let's get back to the original how we got here, right? You asked me, and as soon as we cut off the mics for Vinnie Iyer, You go, who's the best team in the country? I go, I don't know, because I don't. But there's some prime candidates, right? The team that I was going with the last couple of weeks that I don't feel great about because I don't love a 9-minute scoring drought against Wake Forest.
I felt
Blue
like
Devils.
we watched that game together.
Yeah, kind of. We do that with a lot of games.
I feel like
to be fair,
yeah,
we virtually watch games together.
yeah.
You, me, and D. Marinas have a little watch party.
Mm-hmm.
We're like,
He's the only guy I can talk to about ladies hoops. So.
I feel like we're about like 2 weeks away from just having little FaceTime parties while we're watching games.
Kind of weird.
But
I don't know. I
don't feel great about watching Duke go one field goal in the first 9 minutes of the second half.
I told Maddie to take a flyer on Florida.
I saw that. I wouldn't. I'm not gonna push back
but is Florida better than Bama? I don't
think so.
I don't think so either.
Like I probably take Bama over Florida, but do I take Auburn over Bama?
So the thing that's scary about Auburn is they showed you that they could win an SEC Saturday night conference football game.
Yeah, they can go beat. They can go
because they're prolific scoring the basketball.
Yeah, that's Bruce Pearl, right?
But that game was not.
That game was the epitome of Bruce Pearl style versus Rick Barnes style, and Rick Barnes won the style battle, and Bruce Pearl still won the game. That's a bad sign for Tennessee. It's also a bad sign for the rest of the country.
That was a heck of a play by Janai Broom, though.
Like, if you can get Auburn into your style of game and they can still beat you, you're in trouble.
So I don't know if I would say Auburn, though.
I feel like I would take Bama. And I don't know if that's just I don't know what that is. Because Auburn's obviously really, really good. But I think my gut tells me Bama. Do I trust Nate Oates more than I trust Bruce Pearl? Is that what I'm doing? Or do I like the talent better? Like, do I like the overall high-end talent better on Bama?
Oh, Bama's pretty good.
That's what I mean. Like, I'm having a hard time nailing down what it is about those two teams.
I could probably get the most plus money on Florida, so I think I may take the flyer on
from a betting standpoint,
from a Warhorse standpoint,
for sure. But Ken Palm likes Florida better.
I'm telling you, like
their metrics are really good. I mean, their metrics are really good.
They're good.
Like, but I'm sitting there and I go, okay. I kind of like Grant Nelson. I really like Mark Sears.
Good call.
You know,
Sears is a stud. Sears is player of the year candidate.
And he's one of those guys. Like, okay, tell me
can he take the game over?
So how many times have we seen a Mark Sears win a national title? Because you know what I mean. Like, that's a guy that wins you a national title. Is Broom that guy?
I don't know. He's pretty good.
He is pretty good. But is he that guy?
He's an old head, too.
I know. So is Sears. Is that, do we see, like, I've seen Sears win a national, like that version of a player win a national title before as taken over.
You think Duke defensively is a product of the conference?
I don't know. I'm having a really hard time telling because that conference
they can flat out defend.
Yeah, but that conference is bad.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know where to draw the line. You don't have to get defensive. You don't live there.
I'm so over you.
You weren't born in the darkness. You adopted it.
I wasn't born in the
By the time you saw the light, it was really blinding.
Big Bang, yeah.
Me too. Big Tom Hardy guy.
Oh, yeah, he's the GOAT.
Like, I've seen more Mark Sears win a national championship as taken over than I have Brooms.
Okay. Are you taking the SEC or the field? You're going to take the SEC, aren't you? Because of Bama, Tennessee, Auburn, and Florida.
Yeah. I mean, because honestly.
So that means I get Houston, I get Michigan State.
I get Iowa State.
I get Iowa State. I get. I like Purdue.
You get Illinois.
I get Illinois.
Full strength Illinois?
Illinois did some silly things yesterday. They ended up pouring it. Like, I think they covered, but God, they were beating the brakes off of Northwestern. I liked them a ton yesterday.
I think I'm taking the SEC.
Really?
Versus the field. I like those four teams more than like everybody except Iowa State.
I still have to figure out why. Because I don't love Marquette, but I would not be excited to play them
That's
to beat
almost
them 6 games.
always how I feel about Marquette. Is I don't love them, don't want to play them at all, because they're pretty nasty. Like they'll get after you. Don't really love them. But I'm taking, if you give me Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, or everybody else in the country, the only teams I like even in that same neighborhood are Duke and Iowa State. I'll take my chances with those 4 over everybody else.
Yeah, I'm going back to the well. I'll give you 3. You take your pick.
All right.
Michigan.
Okay.
8.5. UCLA on the money line. And I like Arizona.
You know where I'm going?
Arizona on the money line.
My fighting Mick Cronin's on the money line,
and we're
baby.
We're going to start this other hot streak, right? Because we're moving in the right direction.
We're riding.
There's 3 of them. Let's go.
With Mick Cronin, Master Motivator, on Bet On It, brought to you by World-Herald Sportsbook. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. DB.
Yes, sir.
Have we missed anything?
No.
Not a thing?
Yeah, we missed a ton.
We didn't miss a single thing.
I am happy to hear from my man, K. Coos, who should be pretty busy, man. Isn't today the first day you can file taxes?
I have no idea.
I think it is. My man may be super
I'm
busy.
going to wait a couple months probably like I normally do.
Now, this is he's the first Chiefs fan that has slapped my wrist.
About what? What are we slapping wrists about?
He didn't really slap it. He's funny. He just was like, hey, that's the wrist. I got you the other day pretty
You
good.
did it hurt. I was happy about it.
It was only like just a tip. With the fingers. It was just like it wasn't a big one. It wasn't a.
It stung a little.
That's because I didn't. It wasn't.
It stung a little bit.
Yeah, whatever.
Didn't like it.
Don't talk like that.
You seem very hurt.
He's like, hey, that's the. Oh, we were going back to the KC thing. He's like, hey, that's the risk of running the quarterback sneak. I get it. I don't love the play call. There was way too much sneaking going on yesterday. To begin with.
Both games.
This is isolated. Remember, I'm not a fan. I didn't really care who won. I did because I said the Chiefs would win and I wanted to be right. But it was not a good spot. Like just at the end of the day, like
just a bad spot.
I'm not saying that it didn't deserve it or didn't earn it or was a bad play. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying in a game like that.
Can I ask you a question though?
The mechanics should matter.
The mechanics definitely should be better. And that gets us to my whole point earlier where
But there was way too much sneaking going on.
In the year of our Lord 2025, we should probably be able to figure out a better way in a multi-billion-dollar industry.
I still don't know what it would be. I get you and like.
Listen, man.
I shouldn't have got him started yesterday.
Figure it out.
My man went off.
Figure it out. It's not that hard. Figure it out.
I don't know how
you got cameras and sensors in every damn thing on every field in the world. Figure it out.
Yeah. Now, I'm also with SW here, too. And my man, Brett Zickman, not only does he talk me off the ledge a lot of times, just with normal conversations, but
because you're like Creed, you're 6 feet from the edge.
We constantly talk about not chasing points. It's kind of an ongoing.
What did I text you?
It's kind of an
what
ongoing
did I text you
thing
real
between
time?
Me and him. But you see it every week, even in the regular season.
This is why the analytics guy needs to actually also watch football.
It should have safely been 24-21 with no sweat. But my man SW. You know, he was like, we should be talking about the stupidity of it's a little harsh, but going for 2 at 21-16, 2 extra points because KC kicks as well. You're 31-31 and it's going into overtime. Now, I don't know about the butterfly effect of how each team would have played
after
under that scenario.
Because the score is different, you play different.
But I am 100% like.
I texted you in real time.
It should have been 24-21.
As soon as they announced, hey, there's this penalty,
and I was just joking too, and I was like, weird.
And I go,
1.5 is fully in play now with the way that this is going.
And I go, I don't really love chasing the points this early.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
If you have points, if you have a chance to get points against that team, you get them.
Hey, they already had the point, Shane.
But that's what I mean. But then they took the point away.
The Commanders decided to kick the field goal after going for it the whole way down the field. My dude was beside himself.
I don't get it because, and we had this argument. I had this argument like a few weeks ago with Husker X's and O's. He's talking about analytics or whatever, and I was like, hey, genius. Patrick Mahomes breaks the analytics numbers, number one. Because he does. Number two, because we were comparing college and pro kickers.
Well, hey.
College kickers also break the analytics in the opposite bad way. Right?
That?
Like you can't sit here and and not watch the games and tell me, and he was watching the games, I'm not saying he doesn't, but you can't sit here and just rely on the numbers and be like, oh, time and situation don't matter with a college kicker.
So, and it's weird because I talked to him about football, for years.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like just a normal good football head.
Yeah.
He's and I'm shocked because he's not really. He has a
total blind spot for the Chiefs.
He's the closest of the irrational Chiefs.
He has the total blind spot for the Chiefs.
I mean, even Channel 3 Sean is bad, but he doesn't take himself. He's able to. He knows
recognize I'm a homer.
Yeah.
Like, you can't sit there and tell me that you can use the same math for Patrick Mahomes that you can for everybody else.
You just
can't.
But I know so many. I'm happy for X's and O's. I'm happy for Channel 3 Sean. Les is a huge. My man, my poor man Les was just like.
I'm so happy.
Stressed.
We love Les.
No, he's the GOAT.
Yeah.
St. Louis Jordan. Mm-hmm. B-Mac. There's so many. Greg Sharp. Gabe Sharp.
For being not a Chiefs fan, I'll kind of ride with them.
Yeah, they don't
bother me at all.
They don't bother me either.
I love Mahomes.
They don't. I don't.
I do.
But I love the way. So this is weird.
And I love Andy Reid.
You know hot take. This is not like Amazing Daniel's hot take.
Okay.
Because Amazing Daniel's hot take, man, he hates the tush push. I don't think that's a hot take, Daniel.
No, I think that's pretty common now.
The Chiefs. This is. I don't even know how else better to say this. Mm-hmm. Do you know why I wanted something different in the Super Bowl?
Why?
The Chiefs just aren't compelling for me.
Why?
Because they're almost so robotic. I just know what I'm gonna get, and
it's too predictable.
So you can only, but that's not to say I'm not appreciative of their excellence.
Sure,
it's just not very compelling.
It's surgical.
Yeah, it's just not.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting there last year as a 49ers fan, and I know exactly how that game's gonna go down. I know exactly. I'm watching it real time. I'm texting you real time.
Oh, yeah.
And I know exactly how this game is going to go down because I've seen it too many times. When I say Mahomes is 100% in those situations in the playoffs, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
It's literally it's how they define clutch situations in the NFL, right? It's fourth quarter. It's, I believe, less than 4 minutes and within a score or tied.
You want the difference?
We're going to do this thing again.
You want the difference of what's not compelling?
What's that?
So when so they had the play, there's two. The play to Kincaid early on third down, it was kind of low. It was high and away.
Mm-hmm.
Ball he should have caught. Reed kind of pulled his arm down, but it was after Kincaid was kind of, and I was like, ooh, you got to kind of keep pace here with the way the Chiefs are moving. So that was early, right? The little crossing route to Samuel, I wanted him to throw it on time. Mm-hmm. So I was like, ooh, that's going to come back to haunt you. Mahomes throws a ball to Hollywood Brown on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And I was so mad that Romo said, oh, he basically insinuated Hollywood Brown is not used to balls being that well thrown, so he tried to overdo it to stay in bounds. I'm not exaggerating. He's like, oh, he's not used to balls being thrown that well. I was like, well, it wasn't a great ball,
it was a good ball,
but at no point did I think, ooh,
that ball was too good.
Hollywood Brown didn't make that catch. The Chiefs are in trouble.
No,
what
about the Juju Smith-Schuster
I was like, oh no, I said they're just living on borrowed time. That's when Hollywood Brown fought that ball going out of bounds. I did not think.
Didn't think twice.
It was going to be some critical non-play. I'm like, they'll get another crack at it and they'll make a play.
You had Juju Smith-Schuster on one where Mahomes steps up, finds him across the middle. It's high, but it's a good ball, and goes through Smith-Schuster's hands. Don't think it's 3rd and 20 after that. I don't think twice about it.
Yeah.
Or you've got the other one to Hollywood Brown on that was a great ball, the deep ball. That's really good coverage. Hits Hollywood Brown in the hand. He's not able to bring it in. Don't think twice about it. You know why? Because Mahomes is just going to figure it out the next play anyway.
It's just weird how I consume the information.
It is inevitable. It feels inevitable.
You know what's been inevitable? To
Thanos?
use that word. Well, yeah, Thanos always. But it was just a matter of time that the NFL had a team like this when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Because this reminds me of Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR, where it's every year he's going to be the champion. And we haven't had this yet, like this, to this extent in the NFL, where it's just the dominance for year after year after year when it comes to them being in the AFC Championship game and now the Super Bowl run. So, I mean, it's just inevitable. So
you know what it feels like? It reminds me of this scene in The Last Dance where it's the 98 Eastern Conference Finals and Reggie Miller has that push off and he hits the three-pointer against Jordan and there's like 0.4 seconds left. And even as the ball goes through the hoop, Larry Bird, the head coach of the Pacers at the time, doesn't crack a smile because he looks at you see him real time. You see him watch the ball go through. He looks at the clock, sees that there's half a second left, and he goes, "Well, we left too much time on the clock." Now Jordan has a falling three-pointer rim out, so they do end up winning there. But like that's what it feels like at every single moment with Mahomes. It feels like Larry Bird looking at the touchdown get scored, looking up at the clock and go, "Oh, we left too much time." Every single time they get the ball.
I just.
Do you have that anticipation of greatness?
I do, because you know what? And I wasn't being facetious with Vinnie about guys that are going to have gold jackets that just can't beat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Again, 22 of 34. He had the two what I would call bad balls. The one to Samuel, I think he would want back. And then there was the one over the middle on the skinny where he missed. He missed.
He had one early that should have got picked too.
Yeah, the first two balls.
Should have got picked. Yeah.
So I don't just want to look at the numbers, right? But DBs drop balls all the time.
Yeah.
So interception worthy balls.
But it was bad throws. There were two bad throws early. Yeah.
But he's still,
really good for the most part.
He didn't turn. He had the two touchdowns, no picks. He ran the ball well. He's 23 of 33 or 24 of 33 or whatever. A lot of times that's like you win those kinds of games.
Mm-hmm. More often than not, you're going to win that game.
And he's 0 for his last 4 against Mahomes, and all he's done is put up ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, he plays really, really well. And it doesn't matter.
You just can't beat that guy.
You know what Vinnie Iyer said might be the equalizer for the Eagles, though?
What's that?
It's the one thing that the Bills forgot about late in the game. Running game.
Yeah.
Like James Cook could have been the equalizer for the Bills. Saquon Barkley could be the equalizer.
And you don't allow Kansas City to play small, speedy D ends either.
Yeah. Like you got to punish them a little bit.
Anyway, remember, Arizona against ISU.
UCLA money line.
On the road against Southern Cal.
Michigan plus
at
minus
home,
8.5.
At home against Penn State.
There you go. I'm sticking with my fighting Mick Cronin's. Master motivator.
On the road
got
against
him in the right track.
Against a well-coached team.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.